In Note 001, one day in 2023. That day was a beautiful sunny day like any other normal day. As I walked past the bustling shopping center, people were still happily arguing with each other about that delicious item. I'm buying it. Who wants to exchange items? I was also humming my favorite song, carrying a cheerful mood on the road. The next thing is that no one could have guessed that a streak of light suddenly descended from the sky to the ground. The main character who was walking was also stunned, and the streak of light was getting wider and wider. People on the street began to panic in fear, shouting loudly, "Is it a terrorist attack, or an earthquake?" People didn't know that today was the last peaceful day. A very fast blue filter covered the entire city, creating a very dark and gloomy scene. It seems that a disaster is about to come to this city. The main character was uncomfortable with the blue light in front of him, covering his eyes. When he opened his eyes, the scene in front of him had completely changed. The main character looked at the scene in front of him in a daze. What's going on? He only saw that the ground where he stood was directly cut off. The city was cut into a square box. From the ground, a block of iron numbered 8 rose to support this cut city. Looking far away, it looks like a fish tank isolated in a museum. The people present were worried and yelled, "My head hurts so much, is it an earthquake or a terrorist attack?" The main character was silent. The phenomenon in front of him was a shift in space, another world. What he often read in novels and comics is really happening. While he was in a daze and didn't understand what was going on. Suddenly in front of everyone, a board began to appear. A strange system appeared, showing the announcement that the game has started. Please roll the dice. The main character was very surprised, reading the line over and over again. The dice game, what is it talking about? While he was seriously thinking, the girl next to him suddenly panicked and pointed to the sky. Look up there, everyone, look quickly. At this time, a huge wooden block appeared in the sky, descending here at the speed of light. The main character looked up in surprise, and before he could digest this surprise, another surprise came. When the wooden block got closer and closer, he was shocked to realize that it was a dice. In less than half a minute, the huge dice fell to the ground with a bang, and the number 3 appeared on the face. The mysterious system in front of everyone once again announced that the pawn 08 moved 3 steps. It turns out that their number 8 stand is the pawn number 08. At this time, standing on a map or saying that it is a long runway. I don't know how many squares there are in total. Immediately, like the system announced, the pawn number 8 slid a section of 3 squares on the runway. The people above all felt this movement and yelled, "The city is moving, what the hell is going on?" The poor child was scared and rushed into his mother's arms. "Mom, I'm scared." At this point, the main character also understood a little bit. We were summoned to a game. Except that we are not players, we are the pawns of this game. The main character leaned against a wall nearby to try to keep his balance. And the pawn, after moving 3 steps, finally stopped. The main character once again confirmed his guess. I guess the player is the entity that rolled that dice. We are not this city, it's just a pawn that a player has chosen. The main character was very puzzled, but if the player needs a pawn, why summon the city? Why are we also summoned? While the main character was lost in thought, the system in front of him made a sound to get his attention. The system displayed a new message. You have arrived at the defense space. The difficulty and defense time are being set. Please roll the dice. Someone rolled the dice and the system announced that the difficulty level was 1. The dice were rolled again and the system added that the defense time was 3 days and was summoning the map. At this point, a square box appeared from the ground, very similar to a city. But the strange thing was that the scene inside was full of trees, not like a place where people could live. The box quickly flew up and merged into the city box. The wall in the middle also disappeared, leaving no civilians. Everyone was very suspicious and waiting, seeing something strange appearing on the ground. The system then reminded them that the defense mission would soon begin. If all 4 bases were destroyed, the game would end. Suddenly, 4 buildings appeared in the city. The information board above corresponded to the 4 bases. The system continued to explain the game rules. If the game ends, the pawn will die. The people heard about death and were immediately shocked. What about us? Everyone shouted uncomfortably, "What is this nonsense? Take me back right now, stop it." The main character looked at everyone. Although he didn't say it, he knew that no matter how much they shouted, it was all meaningless and useless. If they needed to communicate, they would have done so from the beginning. From the beginning, the main character determined that if he wanted to survive, the prerequisite was to focus on these notifications. The system then displayed a new message, providing basic equipment for citizens. Then from the board came a strange dice with the announcement, "Citizens, please roll the dice." The equipment given will be based on the number as follows: 100 mythical rank, 99 to 95 legendary rank, 94 to 81 hero rank, 80 down to 61 magic rank, 60 down to 1 ordinary rank. Items are being provided. The main character held the strange dice in his hand. It was a 100-sided dice. At this time, the man next to the main character suddenly shouted, pointing to the square over there, "Something is coming. I don't think it's a rescue team. They are too big and different from humans." When the distant figures got a little closer, everyone screamed and realized they were monsters. The monsters were all holding weapons and rushing towards the people. The people were completely panicked and ran in all directions. "Save me." But humans couldn't compare to the monsters who were rushing over at a terrifying speed. They quickly slaughtered the civilians, regardless of old or young. Those who were killed kept screaming, "My legs." Wait a minute. On the main character's side, although he had run as fast as he could, he was still caught up by a big blue demon. With a pop, he was hit in the head and flew several meters away. This hit also helped the main character realize why humans were needed. They were the force to protect the pawn. The main character, with a bloody head, was thrown far away. Luckily there were a few boxes on the other side to cushion him, otherwise, his organs would have been smashed. The main character realized that what we need to protect is the city in order to continue to the end. This is an excellent game of entities that could be gods or demons. The demon that had beaten the main character half to death was now looking for another target. Behind it, a fellow demon was also carrying a bloody axe, symbolizing the large number of people it had killed. While they were hunting for prey, they didn't know that someone was charging at them from behind with a spear. The spear was not aimed at the monsters but stabbed straight into the ground. Very quickly, a huge fire tornado appeared behind the demons. The tornado quickly swept away the surrounding demons. And the 2 demons in front of the main character were also swept into the fire and burned them. The fleeing people were shocked by this movement. They admired the girl very much. The monsters were killed by her immediately. Who is that? The brave girl is Go Haichu, a level 1 commoner. Her weapon is the Tooth of the Real Fire Dragon, a legendary spear that allows the user to borrow the power of the real fire dragon. Haichu sternly told everyone that the injured should run to the NASA tower quickly. The soldiers and police should quickly gather into a line to protect and roll the dice. Immediately, everyone suspiciously looked at the 100-sided dice in their hands. "The dice is this thing, huh?" Haichu explained that if they roll it, they will receive equipment corresponding to the number they roll, retreat if they only receive ordinary rank equipment. And those from the magic rank and above should support me. Everyone heard that, although they didn't understand much, they rolled the dice. Then everyone held corresponding weapons in their hands, looking at their weapons in confusion. It's like what she said. I don't know what's going on anymore. A brave girl holding a weapon went towards Haichu who was fighting. "Just do as she says." So everyone quickly regained their spirits. "Everyone, hold your weapons up." That day we lost our normal lives and started a series of extraordinary days. The first day of the new year should be a happy scene, but now on the street, there are countless people who have died. And also normally, the hero of the era was born. The main character lay on some old boxes. His name is Choi Jun, level 1, commoner profession. Although he was gradually losing consciousness, his hand was still tightly holding the dice. It seems that he was attacked before he had a chance to roll. At this time, after hearing Haichu's words, he used his last strength to let go of the dice in his hand. And here, on this 8th pawn, I became the strongest. The 100-sided dice rolled down and a miracle happened. He rolled a 100, becoming the strongest. And soon he was called by everyone with the worst name, Trash. A book appeared after the dice disappeared, the Supreme Demon King's Magic Book. The Book of the Casino, a mythical level book, granted the right to use the library of the Demon King Casino who desired everything. Allows the user to see all information such as location, items, hidden events, monster map information, and destination when the mission starts. This ultimate book belongs to the main character who is currently unconscious. And the next information is. However, the casino is an incarnation of possessiveness, so all the rewards that the survivors receive from the knowledge gained from the text will return to the owner of the casino's book. 3 hours after the start of the defense mission, 3,120 people died, 7,023 people were injured, 1 base was destroyed. Haichu, after a round of fighting, looked around again. Is it over? The people who supported Haichu's fight just now shouted happily, "We are alive, alive, we won." Just then, a military vehicle rushed over. Several soldiers quickly jumped down from the car and announced to the people that this is the Korean army. The injured and civilians get on the car. We will evacuate to Namsan Tower. A soldier came to Haichu and greeted her. "Haichu, you've worked hard." Haichu waved his hand, and the soldier continued to say that thanks to her, the army and the police could regroup and be dispatched to other places. This man is named Ji-John, a civilian with a heretical judge's hat as his main weapon. Hendy's hat, a hero-grade hat, thanks to its firm belief, the user cannot fall into a state of confusion, fear, or bewilderment. Haichu asked seriously if everything was over. Ji-John frowned and replied that the phone and internet were all cut off, so it was difficult to know what was happening elsewhere. We use radio waves to communicate, and we will soon receive reports from other places. After finishing speaking, he turned and walked towards the car, saying that we should go to Namsan Tower. The two quickly turned and walked towards the car. As they were about to get in the car, suddenly there was a loud scream behind them. Choi Jun Lee, with his broken body and the book, slowly came over and announced that it was not over yet, and the boss monster would be here soon. He flipped through the book and said it was written in this book. Mission information, data on monsters, and the current situation are all included. Afraid that the two would not believe it, Choi Jun turned to the correct page of information and showed it to the two. "Look at this." The two looked down in surprise. "It's a blank paper, I can't see anything." Haichu asked in a low voice, "Only he could see it?" Ji-John nodded and agreed, "I think it's a data book." Choi Jun was a little surprised. Am I the only one who can see it? Ji-John thought to himself, if that's the case, this item is powerful, information is power. He went up and asked Choi Jun, "Can you give us more information? I need more evidence to prove that what is in the book is true." Choi Jun paused for a while, then he quickly flipped through a few pages of the book. Then he read a series of information in the book, Hendon's hat, which is a hero-grade item, and it is in the same set. The user is Sergeant Calazone. He has 21 days left before he retires. Choi Jun continued to read the next page, and Miss Go Haichu, she has a legendary weapon called the Fawn of the Fire Dragon. Surprisingly, the song she often sings is "I Practice Climbing High Mountains." Hearing this, Haichu turned pale and stopped, and Ji-John whispered, "She has that hobby too." Haichu whispered, "It even includes real character information." Ji-John also confirmed that the information Choi Jun said was completely correct. "I agree that the book is indeed a data book. Ji-John thought to himself, if that's the case, then the boss monster is coming here is true. He quickly took out the walkie-talkie in his pocket. We have confirmed. I will contact the headquarters immediately. Choi-Jun nodded. Okay. A man looked down at several boxes from above. I think it's a common thing if this world is a game, then I am a bug character. Because this world is too easy for me, that's why they made me like this so that I can't go out there. This is the administrators looking for bugs and isolating me. The man in patient clothes with a bandaged wound turned his head and looked out the window, muttering to himself. He turned his head and continued, one day when I can go out, the world at that time. Before he finished speaking, the scene changed again. Ji-John turned off the walkie-talkie and shouted to Choi-Jun. Choi-Jun was startled and turned his head. Yes, yes. Ji-John said solemnly, I have received instructions from the headquarters. What you said is a gamble for us. But because there are no other plans and no time, we will choose to believe what you said. As he said, he handed the walkie-talkie to Choi-Jun. Please provide us with as much information and countermeasures as possible. Choi-Jun took it seriously. Yes. He immediately checked the microphone. Hello, hello, 1, 2, 3, 4. After the other party indicated that they could hear clearly. Choi-Jun also went straight to the point. I will talk about the defense mission. From now on it is the defense mission. We have to defend the stronghold from the wave of monsters within 6 hours. After dealing with those monsters and ending each wave, the boss we have to fight will be the boss. The boss is a two-headed Aegis with difficulty level 1. It uses both melee and magic attacks. Choi-Jun said that we will win if we defend the outpost 4 times a day, 12 times in 3 days, and defeat the insects. He also said that he has all the information about this mission. If we use the information and strategy together, we can survive and successfully defend the outpost. Then, I will find a way to restore the world to its original state. Haichu felt a sense of difficulty after hearing these words. She looked at Choi-Jun's back and thought that he was not only thinking about the mission, but also about what would happen after that. Choi-Jun was still reading some information in the government's book. He said into the walkie-talkie, Okay, I'll start. I'll check it myself one more time. The information in the casino's book takes away all the rewards from the people who are shared the information and the scope of the information sharing. The army team is constantly recording the information that Choi-Jun has obtained. The book includes not only those who have heard the information directly from him, but also those who have heard it from others, rumors, etc. Any information that originates from him is very helpful for the war. Haichu and Ji-Jun will participate in the battle. Choi-Jun will help with information sharing for now. The boss monster has also appeared. It has 2 heads, not just one. Choi-Jun pointed out its weakness based on the book. Ji-Jun, who has a calming hat, was very calm in attacking the boss. The boss could not withstand it and was shot to bleed. Haichu's legendary spear is still there. She is very brave and has mastered the use of the spear after several battles. Choi-Jun guided her on where to hit the boss to kill it. Haichu did not disappoint everyone. She slashed the boss's body with one stroke. The brave boss now has the same fate as Master Goro, with its body separated. Haichu turned her head seriously and was slightly surprised to see that the boss was now gone. Her hair also changed color. Choi-Jun smiled and gave a thumbs up. Ji-Jun also quickly reported into the walkie-talkie that it was done. The first round was over. Haichu breathed a sigh of relief and also gave a thumbs up to the two of them. The scene then changed to the casino's supreme devil. The devil was now being tightly bound by countless chains and fell into a deep sleep for 1,000 years. Suddenly, the eyes that had not been opened for a long time slowly opened. At the same time, the total population of Pawn 08 was 193,265, of which 1,76542 were recorded to have died to defend their sovereignty. The devil smiled sinisterly. 91% of the recorded population had been killed in a day. And that is the beginning of my sin, which will continue to the very last moment of this game. It has been a day since the pawn number 08 city was divided. The defense mission is also similar to the defensive game. Monsters rushed into the city again to attack. The monsters will move to the base they must destroy. The players create firepower to stop them. They still keep producing endlessly. A new class of monsters appeared. Choi Jun said to everyone based on the information he had in the book, now is the time. First, use ranged weapons that can attack in a wide range to shoot the monsters. While waiting for the first round of weapons to cool down, start the second round of attacks with other ranged weapons. With level 1 difficulty, the monsters are not very smart. They do not know how to avoid these attacks. The army shouted while shooting, the firepower is too weak. Don't save your bullets, everyone. We can lure them in the direction we want and hurt them as much as possible. And the monsters will split up when they are tricked into following smaller groups. Then, we can consider them to be finished. After that, we will let the teams with higher level equipment to destroy them. Choi Jun continued to report over the walkie-talkie while watching the situation, reminding everyone to maintain their positions and to add positions as needed. I can do it. With this, I can do it. Choi Jun continued to arrange the formation. That equipment is suitable for area support. Okay, just stay there. The monsters will come out of the left alley in 30 seconds. Okay, then that's it. He made up his mind that he and the others would be able to survive. Meanwhile, the city was still fighting the new wave of monsters. The monsters were killed by the firepower before they could destroy the base or even harm the humans. Ji-John shot the head of the last monster. Done. Team 3, scout around. The soldiers next to him immediately replied and reported to Choi Jun-hee. After this round, Ji-John finally had time to seriously think about Choi Jun. Initially, the headquarters had made the final decision, after considering Choi Jun's proposal, but now it seems that Choi Jun is in charge himself. Ji-John felt a little admired as he looked over at Choi Jun. He said that he only had the data in that book, so did he only use that ability to command the entire city? Or is this also a capability of that book? While he was immersed in thought, Choi Jun suddenly came to call him. Sergeant Kun. Ji-John was startled and replied, "What's wrong?" Choi Jun smiled and said, "It's almost over." Ji-John was a little surprised and asked again, "The final boss is coming?" Only to see Choi Jun very confidently reply, "Yes, but don't worry, Haichu will finish it with one blow." At this time, the beautiful Haichu was sleeping soundly in the sleeping cocoon, slowly opening her eyes. The huge face of the boss monster hit her in the face. This giant monster is the Billy Giant Monster Boss, level 1 difficulty. A former being born weak was abandoned by his tribe, very large but lacking in fighting power. Choi Jun asked, "Are you awake?" He shouted loudly, "Why didn't you two wake me up?" Ji-John calmly replied, "We also just ran out of flares." Bang! A grenade was fired at the giant, causing it to scream in pain. It painfully slammed its hand on the ground with such force that its hand also fell off. The cars of everyone were also affected. Haichu was startled and looked at the monster. "What the hell is that?" Choi Jun replied, "That's why we had to be outside. The base would be destroyed in an instant. If we went into the city, luckily, its movement speed is very slow and it is also not resistant to any elements. So, we just need to attack continuously to win." Haichu hesitated slightly, "But only us here?" Choi Jun shook his head, "It's not just us here." Haichu, who had just woken up from a daze, was startled awake when she heard this. She looked pale as she looked at the giant approaching. She quickly took out her spear. "What should I do?" Choi Jun flipped through the book and said, "Items of higher than hero rank have hidden attributes. If you meet the conditions, its shape can be transformed or its hidden skill will be activated. To find out this attribute, we need to set the conditions. Haichu was surprised. There are still hidden attributes? Choi Jun smiled, but the book has told me the conditions for all items. Haichu, who was still a little unconvinced, asked Choi Jun again, "Are you sure?" Choi Jun raised his voice, "Trust me on this book, I guarantee it." Haichu held up her spear in front of me. "I don't have a good feeling about this, but I trust you." As soon as she finished speaking, she stabbed herself in the stomach with her spear. At this moment, the giant clapped his hands together, preparing to strike down a sky-shattering blow. With a loud bang, it hit exactly where Haichu had just stood. "Haichu, the hacker, is fine," Choi Jun assured Ji-Jan. Indeed, under the grip of the demon, mysterious rays of light began to appear. All conditions were met, activating the hidden skill of the fire dragon's Fang. At this moment, the light condensed into a fire dragon, much to the surprise of Choi Jun and Ji-Jan. Haichu successfully summoned the fire dragon, one mission at a time. Of course, the weak giant was no match for the fire dragon and was quickly blown to pieces by it. The explosion was incredibly powerful, creating a shockwave similar to a meteorite hitting the earth. Ji-Jan thought to himself, if this were in the city, this skill would be terrifying. The only thing more dangerous than this skill is Choi Jun's information book. There's too much dangerous information. If used incorrectly, this city could collapse. I think it's a good thing that someone like him has this book. Choi Jun went over to help Haichu out of the rubble. Haichu casually said, "Thanks," and Choi Jun nodded, "It's nothing." At this moment, Choi Jun received a notification that he had completed the defense mission, and the people outside the city would return. The surviving citizens will receive a reward. At this moment, the citizens of the city, moved, called out Choi Jun's name, "Haichu, Choi Jun, Choi Jun." The system displayed the common reward, mission completion bonus, 300 points, base destroyed deduction, 25%, total, 225 points. Individual rewards will be given based on the proportion of participation in monster raids, base defense, and boss battles. After calculating, the citizens were shocked. Reward points. It's really like a game. The point store was opened, including categories such as treatment, experience, skill equipment, items, books, transactions, auctions. The nurse clicked on the treatment store. Treatment, 10 points, heal all injuries. Cleanse, 10 points, cleanse all abnormal states. Regenerate, 20 points, regenerate any injured or defective parts. She immediately shouted, "Everyone choose treatment first." Hearing this, Choi Jun felt as if a weight had been lifted off his chest. The injured will be fine. Suddenly, Choi Jun looked at the notification in front of him. After the total points, the faces of Haichu and Ji-Jan also changed color. The system displayed the reward points. All reward points are forfeited due to the effect of the ultimate sacrifice. Current points, none. The citizens saw this notification and turned pale. Are you kidding me? Why are there no points? What the hell is the ultimate sacrifice? Give us the points, people are dying here. Haichu panicked. Choi Jun, what's going on? Choi Jun frowned at the notification in front of him. I don't know what this is either. The notification in front of him read, Ultimate Sacrifice, sacrifice 10% of the population, double the reward, sacrifice 20% of the population, triple the reward, sacrifice 90% of the population, 100 times the reward. As he was calculating the points, everyone in the city received a new notification. The notification of the highest score achieved in the third-class mission, Seoul Soon, 312 points, second place, Kan San-kul, 1,402 points, first place, Choi Jun, 9,968,844,850 points. Choi Jun was stunned. First place, Choi Jun, 9,968,844,850 points. Everyone in the city turned to look at Choi Jun. Then, from the admiring eyes just now, they turned to resentment. They immediately rushed towards Choi Jun. What's going on? Why do you have so many points? Haichu and Ji Jan quickly stood in front of Choi Jun. They tried to calm everyone down, but how could they be calm at this moment? They raised their voices to accuse Choi Jun. I bet that ultimate sacrifice thing is your doing. That's right, you took our points. Choi Jun immediately defended himself. No, I don't know anything about that attribute, I'm serious. Ji Jan turned his head and said, calm down, we need to treat the injured first. I think points can be exchanged or gifted, so can you share with everyone? Unless you're using the points for your own purposes. Choi Jun immediately replied, of course, I can. Suddenly, the system displayed the passive skill of the Demon King's casino's sole ambition, refusing to share or gift points or items. Choi Jun turned pale. What kind of devilish skill is this? The crowd was still continuously cursing at him. You evil man, give us our points back right now. Choi Jun thought about buying healing items and sharing them with everyone. The system displayed again the passive skill of the Demon King's casino's sole ambition, refusing to share or gift points or items. Choi Jun angrily threw the book on the ground. This is crazy, Haichu, burn this thing. Haichu also obeyed and went to burn the book with her spear. Choi Jun immediately calmed himself down. It's okay, we've thrown the book away, so it should be. But at this moment, the book regenerated and reappeared behind Choi Jun. Choi Jun was furious and stomped his foot. Damn it. Haichu looked at him worriedly. Choi Jun. Choi Jun was under immense pressure, hearing people shouting, give me 10 points, just 10 points, please don't die, please give me points. Oh my god, I trusted that bastard. Where's that bastard Choi Jun? I have to kill him, no please. A soldier came to report to Ji Jan, Sergeant Cohen, casualties are increasing. The citizens were outraged, but Choi Jun was still desperately flipping through the book, looking for a solution. There must be a way, something. As he was concentrating on searching, Choi Jun felt the cold muzzle of a gun pointed at his head. Ji Jan pointed a gun at his head. Enough, Choi Jun, this is the best way. Ji Jan gritted his teeth and shouted angrily, enough. Then he pointed the gun directly at Choi Jun's head and warned, Choi Jun, you're under arrest. Seeing Choi Jun being restrained, the civilians immediately took this opportunity to try to steal points from him. They took advantage of their numbers and greedily began to swarm in. Along with that were accusations and location. Cover your ears and run as fast as you can if you hear anything about his raid. Stay in place until the mission is completed. If anyone has become a sacrifice of the Supreme Being but intentionally hides it, we will consider it a rebellion and prosecute according to the law. Hearing all these notifications, Choi Jun, being ostracized, couldn't help but feel a bit uncomfortable. Following that period, the whole city was enveloped in tension and worry. No one said any superfluous words to anyone, everyone did their own work. The military was discussing battle plans, Haichu was training her health, preparing her spirit to continue for the next battle. Families with young children, families without fighting power, were all busy packing their belongings and taking each other to the shelter. The people in prison were helpless, trying to escape from here, and those who were too helpless could only go to the church to pray to God. And then what was going to come, came. The system issued a notification that everyone didn't want to hear. The next phase has begun, players, please roll the dice. Each notification sounded, making the city even quieter, like the peaceful scene before a storm. And then when the dice had finished spinning a few final rounds, everyone also heard that the pawn number 8 had moved 4 spaces. The system announced that you have fallen into the seal of the Demon King. The demon pillars break the seal and the guardian pillars will appear, destroy all the demon pillars. The Demon King will be resurrected if all the demon pillars are not destroyed in the specified time. Then there were continuous other notifications such as setting the time, setting the number of pillars, setting the difficulty of the pillars. After receiving all those notifications, this time, on the contrary, Haichu let out a sigh of relief and said to Ji-John, "The mission time is 5 days. 5 days is a long time." Then there were the accompanying sounds and the sounds of earth-shattering noises. There are 3 pillars. The first pillar has a difficulty level of 1. This is the guardian pillar. The fallen angel without a part carries a difficulty level of 1. A fallen angel wandering in search of his destiny. The second pillar also carries a difficulty level of 1. This is the guardian pillar of the mad brainworm with a difficulty level of 1, a constantly creative entity. The more time passes, the greater the creativity. And then, after 2 pillars with a difficulty level of 1, the third pillar's difficulty level has jumped to level 3. Both Ji-John and Haichu were shocked by this information. In the middle of the city square, a new towering pillar has just sprung up. After that announcement sound, this is the guardian pillar of the goblin swordsman Boss Jack with a difficulty level of 3. A goblin swordsman has reached the pinnacle of swordsmanship and physique, wanting to break the seal of the Demon King to challenge the Demon King. While all the people were trembling at this announcement, only Choi Jun was leisurely finding a place in the city to lie down and enjoy the leisure moments before the battle. Contrary to most people's grim faces, Choi Jun was the only one with a smile, as if he was very eager and looking forward to it. Suddenly, on Ji-John's side, his walkie-talkie suddenly made an announcement. In this situation, every announcement made Ji-John jump. He picked up the walkie-talkie, a little worried, asking what's going on. Then the walkie-talkie immediately had a very urgent voice saying that the civilians have started to attack. Indeed, these civilians have lost patience and pulled to the first pillar, everyone trying their best to attack this pillar. Then Ji-John heard the person on the other side of the walkie-talkie continue to say that we are trying to restrain them, but it's not successful. After hearing this, Ji-John also knew what he had to do. He turned off the walkie-talkie and told the other soldiers, "Let's move too." Then he also worriedly asked about Haichu, "How about her?" However, Haichu replied to him not with Haichu's voice, but with another soldier. Ji-John just turned his head and didn't see her figure anymore, only heard the soldier friend say that she had left a while ago. Ji-John could only helplessly think, it's really chaotic. Over here, Haichu has also reached the hardest pillar, which is the level 3 pillar. She looked at the monster guarding the pillar and couldn't help but sigh about the past days, the perfect system and the collapse of the corporation in just one day. However, she was not worried about this situation, still proudly observing to slowly find the opponent's weakness. After observing carefully for a while, Haichu became even more determined, thinking to herself, a level 3 guardian pillar, before anyone has to die, I will take it down. She thought so, then without any hesitation, she took her weapon and rushed towards the demon guardian pillar. The sharp iron spear, the great strength, coupled with Haichu's unstoppable determination, gave her a huge force directed at the demon guardian and slashed. Who would have thought that no matter how great her momentum was, he just sat still, leisurely raised a hand, used his sword, and seemed to effortlessly block her attack. After blocking her, the demon then lifted his sword and gently swung it. Just one swing of the sword, a destructive force immediately came and threw Haichu away. Just now, the momentum was so great that she herself couldn't resist it. Suddenly, in the pain, Haichu's eyes caught a glimpse of something else strange. A large beam of light appeared, symbolizing the presence of the owner of that powerful light. Even the guardian pillar also glanced, a bit surprised and curious to know who had just appeared. And he didn't have to wait long, those legs gently touched the ground. The one who just arrived is here to challenge the guardian pillar. Choi Jun, with a cool entrance like a toilet, just arrived and helped Haichu. Being thrown by someone made Haichu lie in his arms and couldn't help but happily shout, "Choi Jun, you're back." Choi Jun smiled lightly, nodded, and put her down. When she was standing firm, he looked at the guardian pillar in front of him and then asked her a question. Can you tell everyone? What? Haichu asked him in confusion, only to hear Choi Jun confidently laugh and continue. I will take all the rewards. Choi Jun was extremely arrogant when he said this, making Haichu feel like she was struck by lightning. She was so helpless that she could only ask him irritably, Are you serious? At this time, Choi Jun also stopped joking with her. He walked forward in a very proud manner, wanting to deal with the guardian pillar himself. While walking, he was very comfortable waving his hand without turning his head, using his back to talk to Haichu, telling them not to appear in front of me anymore, if they don't want to lose more rewards. Choi Jun, Haichu irritably shouted his name. But Choi Jun didn't care much. He had taken out his weapon, which was the strongest book that everyone envied. As soon as he opened the book, Jun thought to himself, there's no way to return everyone's rewards, or to get rid of this cursed book of the Demon King. However, he didn't do that after reading a round of that book. Choi Jun immediately decided to open the system and order the system to buy the score index. The system immediately appeared. Jumping up the store, the level index will increase by a number. Because of each index, the system then showed the indices that Choi Jun currently has. Then tell him to say the name of the index and the number you want to upgrade. Choi Jun almost didn't take a second to think to order all indices to increase to the maximum. As soon as he finished saying that, the system board of other players also immediately showed the announcement that Citizen Choi Jun is the first player to reach the endurance threshold of 100, Citizen Choi Jun is the first player to reach the intelligence threshold of 100, Citizen Choi Jun is the first player to reach the wisdom threshold of 100, Citizen Choi Jun is the first player to reach the agility threshold of 100, Citizen Choi Jun is the first player to reach the strength threshold of 100, Citizen Choi Jun is the first player to reach the luck threshold of 100. All these announcements made the other citizens even more jealous of Choi Jun. Then Choi Jun asked the system again, how many dice do I have for equipment? A total of 423,512, the system calculated and gave a number. After hearing the result, Choi Jun once again ordered the system to discard those below the magic level and only roll all from the hero level up. The system also did not hesitate at all, immediately entered the automatic rotation mode. After the automatic rotation is completed, it is a series of announcements such as legendary level equipment 142, hero level equipment 1023, dice roll completed marking all achieved equipment. At this time, Choi Jun remembered his thought of wanting to discard the Demon King's book earlier. But then he thought that if he couldn't get rid of it, he would use all of it to take advantage of all the blood-soaked rewards and the power of the Demon King. He walked bravely, full of determination, with a very noble thought that he would protect the city from this damn game and return to normal life. If that's the only way to atone for his sins, he doesn't care what he's called. Choi Jun finally thought clearly. At this time the level 3 demon pillar, the master swordsman Goblin Jack, laughed and prepared to attack. As soon as he saw the strong enemy, Choi Jun was very heroic, saying sorry, but I don't have time to play with you. The shoes under Choi Jun's feet lit up. It was the wind system magic shoes, hero level shoes gliding on the water. He was like a wave. Energy will be continuously absorbed to maintain this state. Choi Jun disappeared in front of Goblin Jack in an instant. I'll be right back, so wait a bit. Haichu turned pale. Did he just leave? But Goblin Jack over there just sighed and sat down on the stone bench next to him. Haichu went from one surprise to another. What is he really waiting for? Is this Goblin Jack Guardian Pillar guy okay? At this time, Choi Jun was like a superhero flying around in the city. He knew that Goblin Jack, in other words, as long as he didn't attack him, he wouldn't fight back. The level 1 pillar at this time was enjoying the last peaceful moments of its life. Suddenly, Choi Jun appeared out of nowhere and kicked it into the air. Choi Jun's face smiled lightly, so I need to take down the other guardian pillars first. At this time, the level 1 pillar was tricked by Choi Jun into the air and started attacking him. Choi Jun easily counterattacked, thinking to himself that the moment the guardian pillar kills hundreds of lives, it will evolve into a human-killing demon. It will become stronger than before, and leave the pillar to slaughter humans. I will deal with those annoying. Notification board appeared, time 10 minutes, all equipment and skills will be full of holy power, strength will increase, when against the fallen dark system combined with attack defense blood recovery will increase, fear chaos temptation will disappear, automatically attack all dark fallen monsters. The monster was very puzzled and looked at the muttering lost ones. The scared soldiers just now also stood up and muttered, "The sword of God, the fallen skill is activated, all effects for all members." The soldiers were very spirited and shouted in unison, "The holy assembly of God for the lost birds, the holy assembly, the holy assembly, the holy assembly." Looking at this, the main character standing on the rooftop felt a chill and shivered, muttering to himself, "It's scarier than I thought." Over at Ji John's place, he didn't know what he had said that made the lieutenant colonel in charge of the platoon, Kim Song, exclaim, "Did I hear wrong? I'll give you the car, but you'll have to take care of the rest." After hearing him say that, Ji John couldn't help but ask sarcastically, "Isn't that too much privilege for a sergeant?" In response to Ji John's sarcastic question, Kim Song just smirked and replied, "That's brave. A sergeant like you who dares to speak bluntly to a platoon commander, I like it." Ji John didn't bother to comment any further, he just stood silently waiting for Kim Song to continue. Then Ji John heard Kim Song say slowly as if he was confiding, "We don't have much information about the current situation, what we need at times like this is a calm observer. A calm and rational person, a person who never loses control, a person who can make reasonable judgments in unexpected situations, a cold and rational observer." At this moment, on the side of the fallen monster, the soldiers were concentrating their spirits, uniting and bravely raising their spirits and shouting. All the people rushed forward, then the soldiers began to lift their guns and use them as weapons to transmit the holy power into them. Some people even have the skill of tongue licking, some people even have the power of the holy flag of the goddess. In the cheers of the soldiers celebrating the victory, the shouts like, "In the name of the goddess." At this time, Kim Song also expressed his thoughts to Ji John, which is the position of an observer he needs. He told Ji John, "I think this position suits you well." As soon as he finished speaking, Kim Song received a system notification, "You have defeated the fallen monster, the guardian of the first pillar." The most contributing team is the independent scout team led by team leader Ji John. After reading this announcement, Kim became even more silent, thinking that it was just as he had predicted. Over here, Choi Jun had also received the same notification from the system. He himself was so delighted that he shouted, "See, I told you so." Then he began to loudly analyze the situation as if he wanted Goblin Jack to hear it too. The physical strength of the Pillar Guardian had decreased quite a bit to the point where the team of the sergeant could defeat it. After falling, the amount of blood lost remained the same. Moreover, if the fallen monster was transformed into another creature, his contribution to the Angel of Destiny would also disappear. This would make the sergeant the greatest contributor and receive all the rewards. After saying this, he even tilted his chin towards Goblin Jack as if asking a close friend, "What do you think?" This made Goblin Jack speechless, as if he didn't understand what this crazy guy was mumbling about. Seeing that Goblin Jack didn't respond, Choi Jun became even more cheerful and started teasing him. "It's super annoying that he can't talk, but as long as you're listening, I'm happy." Next, Choi Jun started another round of self-questioning and answering, "Want to bet? If I win, I will lift the seal of the Demon King." Choi Jun said this with an unusual seriousness, while Goblin Jack remained silent and couldn't help but frown at Choi Jun's arrogance. Meanwhile, poor Haichu's spear was also constantly fighting, launching attacks on the opponent. But this time, Haichu's opponent was the anti-human machine MK-05 with the code AHM-05, with a difficulty level of 1. Haichu not only had to fight, but also had to concentrate hard to dodge the unexpected attacks from the opponent. While defending, she also had to worry about what would happen after the call for help. She had arrived at the second pillar, but there was no stopping point. Haichu sighed inwardly, not to mention the continuous upgrades. She had to end it with a fatal blow before it became more dangerous. But the more she thought about it, the more worried she became. She turned her head and told the others to retreat temporarily. Contrary to her worries, the people didn't think so. They thought she wanted to steal points and angrily scolded her for talking nonsense. "What are you talking about? We need points too. At least you have a legendary item. I need to earn points to save my family. I won't let them die in vain like last time," one of them said and rushed forward without thinking about the danger ahead. Near there were also 2 ordinary people who were very daring. Both of them hid behind a rock and waited for the opportunity. When they saw that the Guardian machines were no longer looking this way, they rushed out immediately and got ready to attack. Everyone was secretly pleased, thinking that the Pillar Guardian was theirs because they had a notification board appeared, time 10 minutes, all equipment and skills will be full of holy power, strength will increase, when against the fallen dark system combined with attack defense blood recovery will increase, fear chaos temptation will disappear, automatically attack all dark fallen monsters. The monster was very puzzled and looked at the muttering lost ones. The scared soldiers just now also stood up and muttered, "The Sword of God, the fallen skill is activated, all effects for all members." The soldiers were very spirited and shouted in unison, "The Holy Assembly of God for the Lost Birds, the Holy Assembly, the Holy Assembly, the Holy Assembly." Looking at this, the main character standing on the rooftop felt a chill and shivered, muttering to himself, "It's scarier than I thought." Over at Ji-John's place, he didn't know what he had said that made the lieutenant colonel in charge of the platoon, Kim Song, exclaim, "Did I hear wrong? I'll give you the car, but you'll have to take care of the rest." After hearing him say that, Ji-John couldn't help but ask sarcastically, "Isn't that too much privilege for a sergeant?" In response to Ji-John's sarcastic question, Kim Song just smirked and replied, "That's brave. A sergeant like you who dares to speak bluntly to a platoon commander, I like it." Ji-John didn't bother to comment any further, he just stood silently waiting for Kim Song to continue. Then Ji-John heard Kim Song say slowly as if he was confiding, "We don't have much information about the current situation, what we need at times like this is a calm observer. A calm and rational person, a person who never loses control, a person who can make reasonable judgments in unexpected situations, a cold and rational observer." At this moment, on the side of the fallen monster, the soldiers were concentrating their spirits, uniting and bravely raising their spirits and shouting. All the people rushed forward, then the soldiers began to lift their guns and use them as weapons to transmit the holy power into them. Some people even have the skill of tongue licking, some people even have the power of the holy flag of the goddess. In the cheers of the soldiers celebrating the victory, the shouts like, "In the name of the goddess." At this time, Kim Song also expressed his thoughts to Ji-John, which is the position of an observer he needs. He told Ji-John, "I think this position suits you well." As soon as he finished speaking, Kim Song received a system notification, "You have defeated the fallen monster, the guardian of the first pillar." The most contributing team is the independent scout team led by team leader Ji-John. After reading this announcement, Kim became even more silent, thinking that it was just as he had predicted. Over here, Choi Jun had also received the same notification from the system. He himself was so delighted that he shouted, "See, I told you so." Then he began to loudly analyze the situation as if he wanted Goblin Jack to hear it too. The physical strength of the Pillar Guardian had decreased quite a bit to the point where the team of the sergeant could defeat it. After falling, the amount of blood lost remained the same. Moreover, if the fallen monster was transformed into another creature, his contribution to the Angel of Destiny would also disappear. This would make the sergeant the greatest contributor and receive all the rewards. After saying this, he even tilted his chin towards Goblin Jack as if asking a close friend, "What do you think?" This made Goblin Jack speechless, as if he didn't understand what this crazy guy was mumbling about. Seeing that Goblin Jack didn't respond, Choi Jun became even more cheerful and started teasing him. "It's super annoying that he can't talk, but as long as you're listening, I'm happy." Next, Choi Jun started another round of self-questioning and answering, "Want to bet? If I win, I will lift the seal of the Demon King." Choi Jun said this with an unusual seriousness, while Goblin Jack remained silent and couldn't help but frown at Choi Jun's arrogance. Meanwhile, poor Haichu's spear was also constantly fighting, launching attacks on the opponent. But this time, Haichu's opponent was the anti-human machine MK05 with the code AHM05, with a difficulty level of 1. Haichu not only had to fight, but also had to concentrate hard to dodge the unexpected attacks from the opponent. While defending, she also had to worry about what would happen after the call for help. She had arrived at the second pillar, but there was no stopping point. Haichu sighed inwardly, not to mention the continuous upgrades. She had to end it with a fatal blow before it became more dangerous. But the more she thought about it, the more worried she became. She turned her head and told the others to retreat temporarily. Contrary to her worries, the people didn't think so. They thought she wanted to steal points and angrily scolded her for talking nonsense. "What are you talking about? We need points too. At least you have a legendary item. I need to earn points to save my family. I won't let them die in vain like last time," one of them said and rushed forward without thinking about the danger ahead. Near there were also two ordinary people who were very daring. Both of them hid behind a rock and waited for the opportunity. When they saw that the Guardian machines were no longer looking this way, they rushed out immediately and got ready to attack. Everyone was secretly pleased, thinking that the Pillar Guardian was theirs because they had a precious weapon like the bow that Mi Chao stole for Trong Tui in the past. The bow of the Royal Army Archer Team of the Ein Kingdom, the Ein Bow, is a magical bow whose power increases with the number of members of the Ein Royal Army carrying weapons. Unexpectedly, while they were aiming and had not yet fired their arrows, the machine had already scanned their positions and actions. The two of them were startled as soon as they saw the machine. In a moment, they didn't know what to do and forgot to find a place to hide. Fortunately, before the two of them were destroyed by the machine, Haichu appeared in time and used her legendary spear to save them. It seemed easy, but she had to use a lot of strength and grit her teeth to withstand this blow. A while later, the machine finally spewed out its last flame, causing a big explosion. Fortunately, Haichu was able to easily help the two escape from that move. At this point, she was also exhausted and her breath was a bit rushed before the machine attacked again. Haichu quickly turned her head and told the two of them to run fast. So the two cowards immediately forgot who had saved them, disregarding her safety, and just turned around and ran. Moreover, they were extremely cowardly, crying and running, calling for someone to save them. Seeing the two of them giving up and running away, Haichu couldn't help but laugh out loud. But while she was relieved and temporarily put aside the dangers, the machines were not like that. The machine in front of her began to observe Haichu very carefully, and then in its head, notifications of danger detection, magic power analysis, body analysis, player rank habit analysis, and other analyses began to pop up after carefully studying Haichu. In less than a minute, the machine's brain had solved those data. Analysis completed, the machine counterattacked Haichu, and began to manufacture. At this point, when Haichu saw the machine starting to manufacture something, she was startled and panicked. "It's making a new machine, I have to stop it." But those machines didn't make it easy for Haichu to attack the manufacturing area. They seemed to be controlled by some kind of brain. As soon as they received the order, they regarded Haichu as an enemy from all sides, and all the machines began to surround her and prepare to attack. Haichu fought with them for a while, and she herself was like a machine. She had to defend here and dodge there. After a while of exhaustion, Haichu wondered if they were targeting her, but that was even better, she thought to herself. Haichu used all her strength to create a shocking, fiery blow that knocked all those machines away. After dealing with the shrimp soldiers and crabs, she leisurely held her spear and looked straight at the brain machine. Before she made a move on it, Haichu didn't forget to worry about the safety of the common people. She didn't turn her head but shouted, "Everyone, retreat as fast as possible." Then, without hesitation, she swung down a powerful blow. The power burst out, creating a dazzling spark. The people below saw this great power and everyone ran away screaming. Over here, as quick as lightning, Haichu's power had hit the outer shell of the brain machine. Naturally, a earth-shattering explosion was inevitable when the power collided with it. The earthquake caused by the explosion was also very large, affecting the people nearby. Those who couldn't run in time kept screaming and couldn't help but curse Haichu. "This girl is damned, she must want to kill us all." Even Haichu had a victorious smile, thinking that this move had defeated the demon machine. However, she didn't know that inside the brain of the machine, a new machine had just been completed. As soon as it was born, the machine sighed, "This other world is really difficult. This is the elite monster, a war machine specially designed to deal with Go Haichu, with a difficulty level of 2 and fire resistance. Moreover, it is equipped with a dragon item that increases damage to Go Haichu, automatically detects and follows Go Haichu." But let's put aside those parameters for now because at this point, Haichu still didn't know that she had just received the honor of having a special machine created to deal with her. Not knowing where that monster had just moved, Haichu suddenly felt a chill down her spine. Indeed, because it is a special machine created to deal with her alone. So thanks to its superior skills, it had flown behind Haichu without her knowing. Haichu was startled as soon as she sensed its presence. Anticipating its attack, she didn't hesitate to turn around and raise her spear to block a slash. However, because its damage will increase when dealing with her, that power is very hard to resist. Haichu could only stubbornly resist and was thrown far away. Then, in that dangerous moment, she was in great pain but suddenly realized that someone seemed to have just arrived. Haichu tried to suppress the pain and glanced at the brain of the demon machine that was controlling the machines. There was a figure slashing down from above. Haichu was even more surprised when she recognized the familiar figure. In her head, a name flashed, Choi Jun. Haichu thought to herself, then confirmed that it was him. She became even more curious, wondering what he was doing, and then she suddenly couldn't see the scene in front of her clearly. She only saw a flash and Choi Jun was nowhere to be seen. Following that was an earth-shattering explosion, a large explosion that lasted the entire road. Until the explosion ended, the demon machine specially designed to fight Go Haichu slowly stepped into the pit, using its AI to scan around. After walking a distance, it detected a large pool of blood left by someone on the ground. After checking the blood, the demon machine's information processing unit concluded that the target Go Haichu had disappeared and began to detect traces and search. It was thought that this machine would quickly track and follow to search for Haichu. But after receiving the information, it suddenly stood still as if it had just been activated by some command and kept disappearing. At this time, the system also began to issue notifications related to the demon machine. The conditions for unlocking special qualities have been met. Destroy the host of the brain. The crazy brain unlocks the violent artifact continuously, manufactures the artifact, does not apply to the recently made superior rank artifact. The manufacturing speed is doubled, the manufacturing quantity is doubled until the server is destroyed, it will not stop manufacturing. Choi Jun was standing on the side watching the battle situation of everyone. These pillars took longer than he expected, many people were hiding in fear. At this point, near the first pillar, people are still struggling to destroy it. Damn, it's too sturdy, we don't have enough firepower. The scene at the second pillar is no less fiery. A young man shouts for anyone who is injured to retreat. If everyone dies, the mission will be lost. Hang in there. Behind them, several military vehicles are approaching. Choi-jun thought to himself that he could easily wipe them out, but that would be pointless in conquering the entire game. Not only the mission at hand, but the whole city needs to become stronger. To do that, we first need a capable commander and a champion warrior. That should be Ji-jan and Hai-chu. At this point, Hai-chu, who was unconscious, suddenly opened her eyes. She couldn't believe she was still alive. Seeing someone approaching, Hai-chu thought it was Choi-jun and happily turned her head to ask if he had saved her. But before she could finish her sentence, she saw Goblin Jack standing coldly next to her. Startled, she broke out in a cold sweat, retreated in fear and screamed. Goblin Jack, the cold boy, coldly told her to shut up. Hai-chu scratched her head, gradually regained her composure, and apologized for being too surprised. Then, to her horror, she discovered that he could speak. Goblin Jack coldly said, "I've treated your wound. I don't have much time, so let's get started." Hai-chu saw that he didn't pay attention to her question and felt even more disappointed, thinking to herself, "Is he ignoring me?" Then she asked, "Start what?" It was then that Goblin Jack gently told her that Choi-jun said that after a heavy defeat, he met a great teacher and trained very hard. Hai-chu listened to the human story for Jun and thought to herself. At the same time, on the rooftop, an object flew by at a tremendous speed. The machine muttered, "I've detected Go Hai-chu's reaction, target 325 m away." The machine began to create a gun barrel, aimed, and started to destroy. With a bang, a huge force hit the building in front, and the machine quickly rushed in. But Choi-jun was already there waiting for it. He couldn't help but laugh. "You've been fooled, you idiot." It turns out that to do this, Choi-jun used the Mad Brain equipment connected to the hero-level equipment to confuse the mechanical monsters, destroying traps and mechanical devices 5 times in a row. Sure enough, the machine was once again misidentified as Go Hai-chu. Choi-jun chuckled, "She must be somewhere around here, go find her." The machine began to emit energy to search, then released another huge energy to attack to the right, piercing through several buildings. Coincidentally, that was where the people were fighting with the first pillar. With a bang, the machine fired a powerful shot at the monster, knocking it down. Everyone was shocked. What just happened? The first pillar took a hit and immediately deformed. I don't know if it can still be used. Choi-jun was very satisfied and praised, "Great, this damage should be enough. Thanks to you, their problem has been solved. Now let's go back to playing hide and seek." The mechanical monster was very angry. It was being teased by Choi-jun in the palm of its hand. On the other side, the battle that had been going on for several minutes, Hai-chu was struggling to resist each wave of Goblin Jack's attacks. He opened his mouth and reminded Hai-chu, "Now try using that power." Hai-chu immediately ignited the power of the fire of her spear. Goblin Jack quickly retreated and reminded her not to forget. Then he dodged and teased, "Because that power doesn't belong to you, overuse will hurt you. So instead of blindly borrowing power, just use an amount that you can control. Don't let the power control you, you are the one who controls the power." Hai-chu listened to his words and reduced half of her power. She felt what he said was very correct. It was indeed much easier to use. In the night, the third pillar was constantly being practiced by 2 people. After a while, Hai-chu, tired and panting on the ground, asked Choi-jun if he had made a deal to help me so that I could defeat those robots. Goblin nodded without saying anything more. Hai-chu was a little uncertain and asked if it was feasible. But Goblin Jack, like he didn't know, coldly walked forward in silence. Hai-chu helplessly watched him. How could he encourage people if he kept silent like that? But Goblin suddenly spoke up. "Why did you let me teach you? Because you trust Choi-jun or because you need to be stronger?" Hai-chu honestly stood up and replied, I don't know either. The game mission is all words I don't understand at all. I'm not smart enough to find the answer myself, so I want to get stronger first, then I will understand something if I keep doing that. Haichu stretched herself and smiled. That's how I always live. Looking at this scene, Goblin Jack seemed to ponder. I thought Choi Jun was using her, but in fact, she is a warrior walking on her own path. Thinking of this, Goblin Jack gave a rare smile. Maybe I should teach more seriously. Several days passed quickly. 3 days later, under an old subway station, the weak people were hiding. They were desperate, holding their heads. Oh God, when will this end? Should I go out and help them? Are you crazy? What if we lose more points? What if we fail the mission because we didn't help them? Either way, we're dead. Seeing the crowd in a commotion, someone shouted, "Everyone calm down." Suddenly someone noticed, wait, there's something, only to see the outer wall being broken by something. The people screamed in fear. It's the destroyer. Go Haichu was coming in. It continued to search for Haichu among the people. Searching for traces of Go Haichu. Then suddenly it attacked in one direction. Target detected, destroy. It seemed to be short-circuited, firing in all directions continuously, muttering, target is moving, destroy, destroy. The innocent people were panicking and screaming, someone please help. Bang, the wall was once again broken by the machine. The machine muttered, target hit, destruction complete. From the wall, a brain-like object was thrown out. It seemed that the ancient machine monster was fooled again. As it was about to leave, the ancient machine monster suddenly noticed something. It turned its head to look at the person who was rushing down from the other side, muttering, searching for traces of Go Haichu. The people looked up in surprise. Who? Then they were shocked to discover, no way, it's an angel. They saw Go Haichu, beautiful, glowing all over, holding a spear, appearing. The system showed that the special event condition of becoming the disciple of the Sword Master Goblin Jack has been completed. And inherit his martial arts, hero equipment or higher. Learn the passive skill of the disciple of the Sword Master, the armor and the illusion or the hero-level armor of the strongest swordsman in the Empire. The defense power of the tank gradually increases among the fire equipment that the player is using. Choi Jun sat on the rooftop watching and asked Goblin Jack why it was women's equipment. Goblin Jack replied, it's just something I used to own. Choi Jun asked again, what about the chances of success? Goblin Jack solemnly replied, half, that ironclad bastard is her natural enemy. But now the child has learned our martial arts. At this moment, Haichu, after 3 days and nights of martial arts training, is fighting with the ancient machine. The ancient machine keeps rushing to confirm the target. Goblin Jack secretly thought if the seeds that I planted could sprout in time, then that iron bastard will no longer be its opponent. At this moment, Haichu launched the disciple skill of the Sword Master, a passive skill. The proficiency of close-range weapons will increase faster. 3 days 15 hours 34 minutes since the start of the mission, the first pillar was destroyed. The Yang army is still continuing the fight non-stop. 3 days 17 hours 21 minutes since the start of the mission, the guard of the second pillar was killed. 3 days 21 hours 1 minute since the start of the mission, Haichu defeated the special monster. At this moment, everyone received a new announcement. For days 3 minutes since the start of the mission, Ji-John just finished fighting the monster and turned his head to see a very familiar figure. It was Haichu. Most citizens have returned to the game and understand it. For days 3 minutes 44 seconds since the start of the mission, everyone together destroyed the second pillar. At that moment, everyone told themselves that they could do it, that they could also complete the first mission without the help of Choi Jun. Choi Jun smiled and looked at the book in front of him, thinking that was everyone's thought. At this moment, Goblin Jack standing next to Choi Jun just coldly said that my disciple won. I will keep my promise even though it still has a long way to go. Hearing that, Choi Jun also startled, closed the book, and as if remembering something, he said to Goblin Jack, oh right, so it's my turn now, isn't it? Choi Jun calmly asked him. Choi Jun over here, then it's his turn. But on the army side at this moment, it also arrived, but it was the soldiers shouting to come and get food. Then at this moment, Ji-Jon also received a phone call from Kim Song-min. His voice was a bit annoyed, asking him, I sent you there to survey the area, why when you come back you become a general? I'm sorry, Ji-Jon cautiously said. An apology is enough, huh? Kim Min-song seemed not very satisfied with this casual apology. But then he also had to helplessly continue, forget it, just let us take care of the injured, and you can do whatever you want. I will take responsibility. If you do well this time, I will promote you, Kim Song-min said with a very sincere attitude from the superior. But who would have thought Ji-Jon just coldly replied, I don't need it, and then hung up the phone. After finishing this phone call, the guy seemed to be melancholy and sighed, then thought to himself, I miss Mom so much. But he didn't have much time to think. At this moment Haichu had run over, her tone was a bit urging, Sergeant, this lady, we should set off. Alright, Ji-Jon looked at her and replied. Before the two left side by side. Ji-Jon also seemed a bit worried and asked her again, are you sure you'll be okay, Miss Haichu? But the girl seemed very confident, just casually waved to the fans who were watching her and replied, yes, I promise the master, next time we meet, we will be enemies. After Haichu finished speaking, suddenly in Ji-Jon's mind, a thought flashed, why is the genre of this story completely different? Then after that, he became even more serious and asked himself if he could beat him. That is a level 3 difficulty monster that even Haichu couldn't beat. Then no matter what the result is, there will be many people who die in that battle. I don't know what Choi Jun is thinking about, but as soon as he finished thinking, he and Haichu next to him were suddenly startled by a strange object. Haichu and Ji-Jon simultaneously looked towards the strange object floating in the air, and then they were even more astonished. Haichu just asked, what is that? But before she could finish her sentence, they were shocked again and called out to Choi Jun. But Choi Jun did not respond to them. He stood up straight and kicked the huge flying disc floating in the sky like a heavenly kick. When Choi Jun's foot, carrying a tremendous force, touched it, everything seemed to crack. In that moment, the entire space seemed to echo, something was breaking from above and gradually cracking. Haichu and Ji-Jon were almost speechless when they heard the system announce that the seal of the Demon King had been broken. The person who broke it was Choi Jun. The target of the mission had changed. The system hadn't had time to announce what had changed when the crack in the sky had widened, and the flying disc had created a blood-red crack. It was only when countless monsters began to pour out from the crack that the system continued to issue a new mission, kill the Demon King, the game will end if failed. The citizens, after receiving this terrifying announcement, all cursed Choi Jun, that crazy bastard. I knew he was a dead dog. Even Haichu and Ji-Jon couldn't help but gape in astonishment, wondering what on earth he was thinking. Over here, Goblin Jack also found it hard to believe Choi Jun's actions. He didn't expect him to actually do that. This time there are some interesting people, he smirked with a hint of anticipation. Then he slowly drew his sword from its sheath, and in a second, the same scene as before was repeated. Choi Jun jumped into the sky, and at this moment, Goblin Jack also repeated the exact same action. The only difference was that at this moment, monsters had poured out from the crack, so the old man had to make a move so that his sword wouldn't be bored without an opponent anymore. Goblin Jack indeed possessed the power of a level 3 monster. He only danced a few swords in the air, but he drew countless beautiful sword lines. In the sky, the injured monsters were screaming in pain, and down here, poor Haichu and Ji-Jon had to witness one shock after another. Before they could recover, they both heard the echoing voice of Goblin Jack. This is both a gift and a homework I leave for my disciple. Remember to study hard and disciple until next time. Our call intersects. This is the last sentence that Golding Jack left before he gradually disappeared into that crack. Faster than him, inside the crack, Choi Jun was also fumbling around, searching every nook and cranny. Then on his head was a new piece of equipment named Halo of the Fallen Angel. This is a legendary equipment with the power to protect the user, effective in the areas of the abyss and hell. After a tiring search, Choi-jun finally saw a giant demon at the end of the road. He didn't hesitate to walk towards it, thinking to himself as he walked, "Getting in here is even easier than I thought." When he got close, Choi-jun gently talked to the giant demon in a very friendly tone. "Hey, are you the Demon King?" The demon seemed to be eating something. It hadn't finished chewing when it heard Choi-jun's call and turned its head. Its mouth was still holding a piece of fresh meat that it hadn't chewed yet, and then it heard Choi-jun ask again in a friendly tone, "Do you know where the Supreme Demon King Casino is?" The demon looked confused and asked back, "Casino? Why have I never heard of that name before? But how could a person have arrived here?" As it turned around, Choi-jun's system had already displayed its attributes. This is the Demon King's star boss, the Demon King's authority, named Katumbaba, with a difficulty level of 6 and a peculiar personality. It feels joy in destroying everything with its own hands and absorbs the flesh and bones of defeated enemies to increase its own strength. Upon hearing this, Choi-jun sighed in disappointment, not recognizing the Demon King he was looking for. However, it seems that the Demon Kings interact with each other. Thinking about this, Choi-jun turned around intending to leave, mumbling about wasted effort. It seems that a little more time is needed. He turned around and prepared to leave. But Choi-jun, being polite, remembered that he hadn't said goodbye to the demon, so he leaned over and politely said, "Sorry for interrupting your meal. Your opponent is coming soon, so please wait a little longer." After Choi-jun finished speaking, the demon didn't respond, it just grunted as if it was thinking about something. Then it uttered 2 words, "How annoying," and flung the rocks behind Choi-jun. Fortunately, Choi-jun was unharmed. Just as Choi-jun turned around to assess the situation and see what had just happened, he was startled to see the demon's arm reaching out. As for Goblin Jack, he had just reached the rock wall. He was still a little bit away from where Choi-jun was. The old man was not negligent and flew quickly, wanting to quickly duel with the demon. Who would have thought that as soon as he poked his head out, the person here gave Goblin Jack a surprise. The boss demon that Goblin Jack wanted to duel with, he hadn't even had a chance to hit it yet, and at this moment it was already bloodied. Seeing Choi-jun's back turned towards him, who else could have injured the demon if not Choi-jun? Perhaps even the demon itself didn't expect that it would try to sneak attack Choi-jun, but Choi-jun was so agile. Choi-jun was not only unharmed, but he also injured it. Then he said a few sarcastic words, "My instinct tells me that you're breaking the rules. Who attacks sneakily like that?" The demon was so surprised that it couldn't help but blurt out, "How can an ordinary human?" Seeing that it was about to get angry, Choi-jun quickly waved his hand and explained, This is just a misunderstanding, I swear, calm down." However, the demon still didn't listen. Its 2 hands slowly recovered, and its mouth kept cursing, "Just a lowly human like you dares." Seeing the angry demon, Choi-jun turned to ask Goblin Jack, "Aren't you going to help me?" Goblin Jack shook his head with a smug smile, "I'm ready, but it seems that he's not targeting me." Hearing this, Choi-jun could only scratch his head awkwardly and reply, "That's true." Then he could only smile and take a punch from the Demon King. In his head, he started to laugh helplessly. Every time, things get messed up. If Goblin Jack were to fight one-on-one with the Demon King, then the hidden event of the martial artist's destiny would be completed with him dying together with the Demon King. At that time, the reward for completion would be greatly increased. Everyone participating would receive a bunch of points. But thinking about this, the Demon King's punch had turned into a different kind of power, even more terrifying than before. Choi-jun was knocked flat on the ground, and then his system began to announce the Ulher Dai Battle Armor, a legendary armor, equipment of the heroes chosen for battle with the gods. It enhances defense stats based on the owner's vitality, and durability is automatically restored. With that defensive power, Choi-jun was more comfortable enjoying the Demon King's attacks. He couldn't help but think that he couldn't do anything else, just wait for everyone to earn a few more points, and then he would end this before anyone had to die. Thinking about this, Choi Jun was even more delighted and smiled. This battle was easier than he thought. On this side, Goblin Jack still had no action, just standing still watching the Demon King punish Choi Jun. After standing and watching for a while, Goblin Jack could do nothing more than sigh helplessly. Outside the crack, the monsters that Goblin Jack had just beaten were lying dead outside, dying like fallen leaves. But the number that Goblin Jack killed was not all. Soldiers in the army were also busy fighting the rest. They had to attack them while carrying out the task of evacuating the trapped people inside. Don't let them get close, be careful. As a soldier and a leader, Ji-John naturally could not be among those who were not fighting. After a while of fighting with all his might, he was exhausted at this moment. He looked around and sighed again, worrying that these monsters were weak but too many. We couldn't hold on much longer. And Choi Jun had become the enemy of the whole city just because he dared to break the seal of the Demon King. If anyone had to die today, then now not only the army side is busy, Haichu is also tired. She even had to sit on the roof of the car to be taken to the place of relief. She had a combat mission, and the person in the car had the task of observing and guiding. Right there is the shelter sending out a rescue signal, the person in the car said and pointed for her to see. Understood, Haichu replied. Right after that, she didn't hesitate to stay on the slow-moving roof of the car anymore. Directly using force to fly high, and then Haichu had a beautiful fire dance in midair. Just like Goblin Jack's favorite student, her dancing is no different from him. In no time, the monsters in this area were all dead, each one was roasted into a dark monster. After dealing with the monsters, Haichu was not idle. She ran in to evacuate the civilians right away. This way, hurry up. While evacuating, she also heard people badmouthing and cursing Choi Jun. If that madman Choi Jun didn't break the seal, we would have completed the mission by now. What the hell was that madman thinking? Haichu intended to turn around and continue her mission, pretending not to hear. Then suddenly from behind, a girl came up and asked her, "Are you just going to let it go?" Seeing that Haichu hadn't answered yet, the girl happily asked again, "I thought you would stop because you heard your boyfriend being scolded. It seems you are colder than I thought." This tactless girl named Kan Hyo-woo is a level 1 with the profession of an ordinary person. Just after she finished speaking, this time Haichu finally stopped and asked, "Who said he is my boyfriend?" Seeing that Haichu didn't seem very happy, Hyo-woo teased her, "If you don't admit it, then forget it." So you're sure he's not your boyfriend?" Kan Hyo-woo asked again. After saying that, without waiting for Haichu to answer, she threw the snack bag she was holding in her hand to her. Then, ignoring Haichu's astonishment, Hyo-woo left a cold sentence, "Thanks for escorting us to safety." Hearing that, Haichu laughed happily, "All right then." Who would have thought that when she opened the snack bag, she was so helpless that she was speechless. There was only half a piece left. Back to Choi Jun, the dust had started to settle because Goblin Jack had started to save Choi Jun from the Demon King's attack. Stepping back, Goblin Jack stood in front of Choi Jun to protect him and said to him. Seeing Choi Jun standing still and not leaving, his face dumbfounded, Goblin Jack teased and provoked, "What's the matter, starting to have feelings for me?" Indeed, this question hit Choi Jun's soft and kind heart, making him choke and even more speechless. Then Choi Jun was pushed back and heard Goblin Jack continue to say, "If we can meet again in another world, remember to invite me for a drink, okay?" This made his conscience even more guilty. Looking at Goblin Jack bravely rushing forward like that, and he even saved his life. Choi Jun couldn't help but shout, "Hey!" Then he watched Goblin Jack, who would probably never return. Choi Jun felt even more self-blaming. "Oh my god, I feel so guilty," but it's too late to activate the destiny of the martial artist. Even if I had more time, I would still feel guilty. Suddenly at this time, Choi Jun's powerful book suddenly opened wide. accompanied by a notification that the goodwill of Goblin Swordsman Jack had reached the highest level. The hidden skill of the casino has been activated. Even looking at that notification is full of marks. Then, when he understood, he smiled triumphantly. On this side, Goblin Jack was not as happy as that. After a while of being beaten alone, he also had to sit down and take a few breaths. Then he didn't hesitate to praise, worthy of being the Demon King. After resting, Goblin Jack didn't want to prolong the time anymore. He held his sword upright and stood up determinedly. His hand gripped the sword tightly. It's time to use the ultimate skill. This ultimate skill of mine will put myself on the line, but for my friend and disciple. Thinking about this, Goblin Jack's eyes widened even more, showing his determination to fight to the end. Who would have thought that he hadn't had time to show his ultimate skill? Choi Jun was one step faster. Just using one punch had caused the Demon King to crack all over. Even Goblin Jack was shocked and surprised, unable to say a word. Even the Demon King couldn't believe that he was defeated so easily. Its last words were not a regretful sentence, but a helpless question: how could it be? In the disintegration and void of the Demon King, the system immediately reminded all players that the Demon King Cartoon Baba had been defeated. The most contributing person was Choi Jun. At this time, Goblin Jack was still shocked by what had just happened before his eyes. At this time, when the system continued to announce that all summon monsters had been exterminated, the sword in Goblin Jack's hand also gradually disappeared. Then, in Goblin Jack's confusion, Choi Jun smiled and showed him his book. Goblin Jack saw in the book a notification for Choi Jun to recruit 4 vassals. You can make a close spirit contract with a creature with the highest goodwill or fear index. The maximum number of contracts that can be made is 4, which currently does not exist. Even more surprising is the notification asking if you want to meet the contracted spirit closely with Goblin Swordsman Jack. And then, thanks to that contract, Goblin Jack was saved from disintegration. The demon abyss in the crack also gradually closed. Choi Jun then let himself fall freely from there. After that, he couldn't help but think that he was hated by humans, and now he was even allied with a monster. Looking at the contract image with Goblin Jack, he inadvertently smiled a strange smile. It feels like he is gradually moving away from the human realm. At this time, the system has issued a notice to all the people. The surviving people will receive rewards. Usually complete the task plus 5 points, the Demon King reincarnates plus 100 points, the number of sacrifices is less than 10% plus 100 points, a total of 800 points. The list of highest scorers includes 3rd place Kojian with 3,245 points, 2nd place Go Haichu with 4,543 points, 1st place Choi Jun with 223,245 points. The people looked at this ranking even more annoyed. As for Haichu, she didn't care much about the ranking, no matter what rank. She was still happy as usual. She didn't know that someone was watching her every move from a higher place. The observer was Kan Haiwu. She looked at Haichu, then looked at the light streak where Choi Jun was floating and wondered whether he was a child bringing hope or a fuse for disaster. On Ji Jan's side, he was also confused, wondering to himself that he didn't understand much about these games. But he understood that this game required us to use a large force to defend at the base. Thinking about it, Ji Jan suddenly felt a little scared because if so, would a superhuman individual be accepted, an individual with a maximum level and even easily defeated the Demon King? Would this game allow this to happen? Indeed, at this time outside of space, the system notified the demon holding the bunch that it had detected an abnormal individual named Choi Jun, maximum level, ordinary profession, all indicators are maximum. After showing the information about Choi Jun as another announcement, the decision to act will be implemented to counter this individual. There are 4 different decisions for this demon to choose from, which are to destroy or delay the reset or summon the demon. Of course, without a bit of hesitation, he raised his hand and pressed what he wanted. As for Choi Jun, he was still leisurely lying in the sun, not knowing that he was in someone's sights. And certainly, he would not know that he was chosen to be destroyed. The demon somewhere chose the option to destroy. But right after it clicked on this button, Choi Jun, who was falling, felt a dizziness. When Choi Jun felt it, that feeling disappeared. He carried doubts and jumped down to the ground. Is it because of my imagination? I feel like I've seen that scene before. At the same time, the demon elsewhere received an error message that the command could not be executed, returning to the previous menu, starting a system technical check. The data has been selected to open the system screen. The data has been selected to set up the system. The data has been selected as a hidden data. Other players will not be allowed to view the system. The data has been selected. At this time, the people in the city were excited to look at the reward score in front of them. A loud-voiced policeman announced, "I will announce the research results about the dice game reward." The speaker he was using was a magic tool speaker that transmits the user's voice far away. The more energy the user transmits, the larger the amplification range. There are 7 types of dice and the number on it varies depending on each dice. Weapons, equipment, and tools are produced and distributed randomly to each person. For example, the spoon that Ji-John is holding is a destined spoon, a tool for heroes to return to their owners even when lost and always clean. Ji-John secretly despises himself, agrees that it has a high rank, but not all items are useful for this battle. On this side, a person holding a knife asks the girl holding a shield if she wants to change. It turns out that the props can be exchanged. Another person is shouting, "I am looking for a long-range fighter to fight with me in the next mission." The person on the other side said he was looking for a central evacuation protector. Looking at this scene, Ji-John remembered that he asked Haichu in a deep voice, "Will you really go?" Haichu categorically answered yes. "I don't think I am suitable for the army, there are still many people who have to hide in fear. I want to help those people, of course, I will still help in the mission, so don't worry about that." Ji-John bitterly thought to himself, "I guess we are all gradually adapting to this virtual world, maybe because humans are very good at adapting." At this time, Choi Jun is enjoying the autumn wind on a certain building. He muttered to himself that the start for the people in the city is going very well. The soldiers will be the backbone of the difficult tasks, and the people will help when needed. What we need to do from now on is the most important part. Speaking of this, Choi Jun's face suddenly sank. If there is something wrong with what I plan to set up from now on, this city will be completely destroyed, so the first thing. While talking to himself, Choi Jun suddenly felt a silent hand stroking his back. Choi Jun was startled and turned his head to see a strange girl appearing behind him. She smiled and waved to Choi Jun. This girl is named Kan Hyo-woo, a 5th-level ordinary citizen. Choi Jun asked in surprise, "Who are you?" After a few seconds he remembered that he could ask the book. But there's a more shocking thing that Choi Jun wants to ask, "How did you get here?" You know he is now on a towering tower. Hyo-woo lightly replied, "I just climbed up." Choi Jun was a little surprised, but Kan Hyo-woo also stepped forward and looked at him with extremely interested eyes. She squinted her eyes and opened her mouth. "I think you are very sad because you are isolated, but maybe you are used to it." Choi Jun frowned. "What do you mean?" Kan Hyo-woo shrugged and replied, "Who knows?" Before she could say anything else, Kan Hyo-woo smiled mysteriously and said, "Okay, it's not convenient today, I will come back later." Choi Jun looked at the girl in front of him and turned around. "Why did you come to see me from the beginning? You just came here." Kan Hyo-woo smiled coldly. "I guess you can't guess what I want to say. There is no such thing in the book, right?" Choi Jun smiled faintly. It's a pity that the mind is not part of the data. Seeing Kan Hyo-woo turn around and take out a rope, she smiled at Choi Jun and said, "Well, I just want to see your face, the face of a fool who has the power to rule the whole city, but still chooses the difficult path to go." After speaking, Kan Hyo-woo turned around and jumped down. Choi Jun's surprised look from when she appeared to when she left. Choi Jun still didn't understand what was going on. So Choi Jun stayed on the tower all morning. Very quickly, when the sunset fell, everyone in the city received a new announcement: the player's experience has been increased. Has leveled up, the utility of the people will be improved. The function of customizing the size of the status window has been unlocked. You can choose super small, small, medium, large. The feature to block friends has been unlocked, the messaging feature. The calling feature has been unlocked. The city's infrastructure will be partially restored. Choi Jun chuckled. The more points the city level has, the more the people spend, the more money the city makes. It's a pity that the points I use are not contributed to the city's experience. I've used a lot of them. Speaking of this, Choi Jun suddenly fell silent, thinking about a problem. Where have all the points I've spent gone? I guess the highest possibility is that I've read this book. Many benefits, many harms. Should I continue to use it? The scene shifts to a military rank. Lieutenant Ji-Jon salutes everyone. Beside him, people keep patting him on the back to congratulate him. But Kan Hyo-woo stands on a high place observing this scene. She ponders, they're not doing too badly, huh? Where's a suitable place for me to rest comfortably now? For a weak person like me in this dangerous city. It seems Kan Hyo-woo likes to play the role of a gentle and weak girl, while just now she knocked out a few soldiers upstairs to freely observe like now. Returning to Choi Jun, he is now closing his eyes to rest. Suddenly the system rings out announcing a new change has begun. You have entered the golden trap space of the deity. The city has been invaded by the golden god. If you do not satisfy the requirements of the golden god within the specified time, the game fails. The greed level of the golden god is level 2. There are 4 maps. The mission execution time is 2 weeks. Ji-Jon solemnly pondered. 2 weeks. I didn't think about the settings being changed. It's a shortfall. A new announcement rings out. Find the treasure in the given maps and bring it to the city. The value of the treasure is directly related to the satisfaction of the golden god. The treasure can only be evaluated in the city. People on the street are buzzing. 2 weeks. That's a long time. Is it real? Also, don't see any monsters being summoned into our city. If others complete the mission, we will all receive a common reward, right? The golden god demon pig at this time his face is extremely angry. The announcement appears, there is no common reward for this mission. Individual rewards will depend on the level of satisfaction you have brought to the golden god. The people are now starting to panic. There are no rewards if we don't find the treasure ourselves. But I don't have any combat equipment. Haichu looks at the announcement in front of her, frowning. This mission has too many descriptions. I should skip this for now and go there first. She finished speaking. She picked up her injury and rushed forward in front of many surprised people. First, I will have to look at the entire map of this mission before I can calculate. Choi Jun is still on that tower. He chuckled. Our player is quite lucky with the dice roll. If things go well, we will complete that mission so that we can build the first level of the city. Better yet, I will have to use the casino's book until this city is stable. Then I will find a way to return this book to its place. Suddenly, from within the book, a knife blade appeared. A hand reached out from the book, wielding the knife and stabbing it through Choi Jun's chest. Choi Jun was immediately shocked and showed extreme pain. But the sword suddenly disappeared before Choi Jun's horrified face. Only one sword? The system showed the number of sacrificial items offered to the Supreme Being for the final mission. Choi Jun felt a sudden pain in his chest, and the pain was increasing. The system announced the punishment of the Demon King. The Demon King's casino was dissatisfied with your laziness. Until the user sacrifices the Supreme Being's sacrificial item, the player will suffer great pain and the player's vitality will gradually decrease. If there is no sacrificial item of the Supreme Being, your vitality will decrease until it reaches 0. If you die, the book will choose a new player. At this time, in the new map of the game, it was divided into two separate areas. In Area A, a group of curious people were advancing together. Seeing a gate, they shouted in joy, "We've found the dungeon." It seemed that this dungeon had not been registered yet. One of them cunningly said, "Great, then we'll take it all." But another person wanted to advise, "Can we report the location of the dungeon to the army? Each of us will receive 50 points. However, the person who made the proposal seemed to be the leader. He didn't care much. He pulled out the weapon behind his back and said, "What can we do with a little change?" His weapon was the Black Fire Dragon Sword, a one-handed hero with medium fire damage. But when used with the right hand, it will increase damage when used with the White Ice Dragon, large attribute damage. After drawing his sword, he raised his hand and raised his sword to the sky, boosting the team's morale by shouting, "Let's make history in the other world." These four people were a team called the Kong and Rose team. The team leader was Kanachop, with a strength at level 3 and a team of 4 members. Unexpectedly, just after making up their minds, a strange atmosphere suddenly enveloped the entire dungeon. Along with it were the equally creepy sounds from inside the dungeon door. Something with a large shadow was also slowly stepping out. The group was not scared at all. On the contrary, they were a little expectant and said to each other, "Something is coming, is it the gatekeeper monster?" It seemed so. Then, before they could see clearly, Choi Jun was in front of them. They were still laughing and joking with each other. "I used to be the team leader of the attack team and the guild master, this world is just a playground for us." Just after speaking, Choi Jun rushed over at a very fast speed and whispered all the information about the boss of the dungeon to the team leader. The boss of the dungeon is a couple, the weakness is the light attribute, use poison so must have antidote, extremely fast so the healer and mage must focus on protection. Hearing Choi Jun continuously revealing information about the mission, everyone was scared and covered their ears. Everyone tried to shout loudly to drown out Choi Jun's voice. "Stop him, you crazy bunch." But this was useless to Choi Jun. He not only did not stop, but also tried to speak louder and more information. And there was an empty space in the dungeon where, amidst the curses of the crowd, Choi Jun, the madman, this wretch. Perhaps everyone listening to this will be a bit confused, right? Let me remind you that because Choi Jun is being punished by the Supreme Demon King, he has to find more sacrifices to lessen the punishment. The only way for those people to become sacrifices is to tell them about the tasks in the game in advance. So now, inside the quarantine camp, everyone who became a sacrifice was cursing Choi Jun. "I didn't expect to become a sacrifice of the Supreme Being on the first day of doing justice, where is it? What should I do with that Choi Jun?" But someone else asked, "What can I do with a person who has reached the maximum level and stats, and also has a legendary weapon? Just give up this time-consuming task and settle down." And the same curses echoed incessantly. At the quarantine camp of the Supreme Being sacrifices, those who shared the same enemy, Choi Jun, met and asked where he had encountered them in the forest, and I was in the canyon. "Did you see Choi Jun's face? He looked like a demon, right? I told you that's his true nature." Then they started to remember Choi Jun's appearance and told each other. He said, "Now find more sacrifices of the Supreme Being for me." With that face I almost vomited. Actually, I thought there was treasure or something there and then found out there was nothing. I didn't want to help Choi Jun with his weird task, so I went back to the quarantine camp. Yes, I did the same, that's right, we can't let Choi Jun manipulate our actions. Everyone in the quarantine camp at this time suddenly united in a strange way. On Choi Jun's side, the book had been checked and told him the number of sacrifices of the Supreme Being was 2,452. The Casino Demon King was a bit satisfied. The Demon King's punishment was reduced after receiving this notification. Choi Jun could finally breathe a sigh of relief, finally feeling a bit more comfortable. Then he was startled and asked, "What? The Demon King's punishment? There's nothing like that in the item description." This book actually doesn't reveal all the information about it, think about it. Choi Jun pretended to be tired and sighed for the book to report to the Demon King. And under that disguise, he secretly smiled triumphantly, thinking it was still within the chain of events he had predicted. The Demon King seemed impressed that he had used punishment to control himself, but at the end of the task, he found out who was really being controlled. Just wait and see. The more Choi Jun thought, the more delighted he became. Where he was sitting was the B area in the canyon at the nest of Emperor Gao. So it's not surprising that the monster bird named Emperor Gao returned to its nest. This monster has a difficulty level of 3 and Gao Mirage is said to inherit the dragon blood difficulty, when fighting in the nest is +1. It returned to the nest and saw Choi Jun there, so it immediately rushed towards him aggressively. But the author here switches scenes to the fierce battle led by Haichu's powerful spear. Haichu used her spear combined with the skills she had to stab hard into the rock-hard shoulder of the stone demon. This stone demon has a difficulty level of 2, it is a Choi demon that has evolved to adapt to the environment in the canyon. At this point, when she didn't know what to do with it, Haichu remembered the words of her master, Goblin Jack. Power is not to control, instead, let it be natural. She thought and followed that, swung a strong blow, decapitated the monster Choi. When the monster fell at her feet, Haichu quietly muttered a thank you, her master's disciple was a bit stronger now. She murmured to herself as if she wanted to speak to her master, Goblin Jack. While she was struggling to fight, someone else was leisurely enjoying the fruits of her victory. The girl even shamelessly rummaged through the monster's treasure chest and said aloud, "This is normal, this is pretty good." Haichu couldn't help but call out to her. Hearing the call, Haiwu felt a chill and sarcastically replied, "Haiwu, stop it, talk normally. If people want to talk normally then fine." Haichu immediately retorted, "Fine, you bastard, why do you keep following me?" "Because following you is the most profitable, isn't it?" Kang Haiwu shamelessly replied. After getting a small item from the chest, she shamelessly pointed out where Haichu should go next. Haichu was being used and followed, but she couldn't say anything more, she could only helplessly think that she was too boastful, so she didn't know what to say. Then seeing that Haichu didn't answer her, Haiwu shamelessly smiled and asked sarcastically, "What, you're not going to leave a weak person alone in this dangerous place, are you?" With such a thick face, Haichu had to admit defeat, speechless. Then she had to give up and follow Haiwu to protect her. "Wait a minute," Haichu called Haiwu to stop so she could take care of some personal matters first. Then Haichu took out her phone and texted to report to Uncle Cohen, "I've sent the coordinates, come get the treasure and divide it up." "Okay, I'll be right there," the other side replied in less than 30 seconds. After reporting everything, the two women went on to find and fight the next monster. On the way, Haichu couldn't help but look at the small bag of items that Haiwu had picked up while walking with her. Haichu couldn't help but say, "That's not worth the effort of following me all day," but Haiwu didn't bother to turn her head and replied, "My motto is quality over quantity." Hearing this answer, Haichu was even more curious, not less. "You don't know what treasure is until you bring it back to the city for appraisal, right?" Haichu asked, and Haiwu replied without hesitation, "That's why you have to take what you think it is, right?" But this answer was not enough to satisfy Haichu. "How do you know it is?" Haichu asked again. "I know by these eyes." Haiwu confidently and arrogantly turned her head and replied. Looking at her demeanor, Haichu, despite being much stronger than Haiwu, couldn't help but secretly praise her for being quite weird but cool. Then the two of them just walked together, chatting with each other, answering and not answering. Haiwu crossed over and asked Haichu, "What about your friends?" Haichu honestly replied, "They have already killed the monsters on the way here." Who would have thought that as soon as the answer came out, it would be sarcastically asked by Haiwu, "You don't know anything, do you?" Then Haiwu kindly explained to Haichu in a cold tone that the monster is not the enemy in this mission, and the mission is not as simple as hunting for treasure. Haichu listened and didn't understand. She just looked at Haiwu with a puzzled look. Haiwu then continued, "This is a personal battle for comprehensive rewards because there are no common rewards. After appraisal, you will receive the treasure, so there will be people who have the idea that it is easier to fight people than monsters." Indeed, what Kan Haiwu said was not wrong at all. At this moment, in a hotel in the city, an apartment with signs of a robbery was being cordoned off by the police for investigation. The police on duty saw their superior arrive and respectfully greeted Detective Seo. Police Officer Kang Yusik, who was with Seoul Suit, asked if they were dealing with a treasure robbery case. The officer in charge replied yes. Apparently, he fainted while appraising the treasure, and when he woke up, everything was gone. Hearing this, Seoul Suit said they should have handed the treasure directly to Emperor Kim. Kang Yusik also sighed, found a place to sit down, and said that's right, appraising treasures takes time, usually from 1 to 12 hours. It's almost like the system is urging other players to steal or rob if they can. Hearing Kang Yusik blame the circumstances like that, Seoul Suit expressed disappointment and asked why you inferred the system was urging them to steal. "Oh my, that pitiful thinking. I think it's just an explanation for human greed," Kang Yusik replied indifferently. Seeing these two arguing like cats and dogs, the police officers there couldn't help but whisper to each other. "I didn't expect him to let Detective Seo, the brown bear of the violent crime department, get close to me. Who is that person? I don't think he's a cop." The two of them were talking when they saw something, so they were startled and shouted out loud, "It's Choi Jun." "It's not Choi Jun," someone objected. "No, behind him is definitely Choi Jun, really." Another person confirmed after looking carefully and saw Choi Jun riding on the monster Geo, leisurely smiling at them. As soon as Choi Jun hadn't had time to greet, his mouth was covered to prevent him from saying anything. It was Seon Suk who covered Choi Jun's mouth. He only needed one hand to easily hold Choi Jun, the other hand was raised with a fist on it. Fullback's gloves, legendary gloves, one of the 3 holy artifacts of the old dynasty containing the power of the wind god, attacking with high speed, capable of controlling the surrounding air. When collecting all 3 holy artifacts, the rank changes to myth. The effect is only activated when you are the only one wearing gloves or all 3 holy artifacts are in the team. Then, because of using too much force, both of them fell down several floors, causing a big explosion, making the ground create a big hole. Kang Yusik then ordered his subordinates to issue a warning that Choi Jun was here and called everyone here. "Yes," his subordinate hurriedly replied. And he was harboring a belly full of schemes, thinking of rushing in here. Even though he would put himself in a disadvantageous situation, I don't know if it's foolish or respectful. But I would be even happier if his action caused him to die at the hands of Choi Jun. Over here, Seoul Suit was also very confused looking at Choi Jun sticking his head into the net. Then he couldn't help but ask why you didn't avoid it but came back to the city. Also, this action is not surprising at all. What are you planning? Choi Jun is now inside the city. Everyone quickly exploded with news. The monkey notifications kept going off. What? Choi Jun? Why, Choi Jun just got caught. I saw it with my own eyes. The police friend told me that he was being interrogated and didn't resist at all. I guess he's not that bad. All calmness is Choi Jun's plan. He confessed and is now in jail. The people hearing this started to pick up their weapons. This is their chance to get equipment. Looking for a team from Special Force Kendo Level 4, please recruit me while Choi Jun is gone. I have to get as much treasure as possible. The treasure is mine. The deity Kim Hong, upon witnessing this scene from the outside, was so angry that he gritted his teeth. Meanwhile, in the Goblin Village's forest, goblins were being relentlessly slaughtered. The person who had just exterminated all the goblins excitedly raised his axe, which was none other than the Black Plum Axe of the Night Owl Warrior. This hero-grade axe was awarded to the strongest warrior of the Night Owl tribe. The axe would return to him when thrown. He shouted loudly to announce that he was done. This person's name is Han Menwu, a level 3 commoner, who grumbled about always having to clean up after that monkey. After saying this, he began to draw his bow. His name is Li Wu-jin, a level 4 commoner. The bow he uses is called the Pride of Essen, a hero-grade bow of the Goblin tribe Essen. When she disappeared, the bow also disappeared, increasing the shooting speed but decreasing the power when using Goblin-made arrows. The shooting power is moderately enhanced, and one shot can create 3 arrows, hitting 2 of the 3 fleeing goblins. Some soldiers advised Li Wu-jin that we have lost one person, so I told you to use a gun. Bows and arrows are only effective in stories. Look at it laughing in our faces, Li Wu-jin coldly retorted, who cares? With a puff, the goblin who had just provoked us was shot through the head by a bullet. Li Wu-jin smirked at the sight of the unfortunate goblin lying on the ground. We have a sergeant here, the person who just fired the gun, sitting on a beetle tree, scolded these idiots. When will they run 10 laps around the training field? This person's name is Park Seo-kwon, a level 5 commoner. The jacket he wears is the Wanderer's jacket, a magic-grade costume with low heat and cold resistance and low monster detection reduction. Park Seo-kwon reported in a deep voice that our platoon leader has cleared the outside area. The other end of the line responded, okay, we're almost done here too. The platoon leader is a familiar person to us, Kwon Ji-jan, a level 20 commoner. At the same time, inside the forest, an old goblin was starting a mysterious spell, grinning slyly. The deity is about to manifest. When our deity appears, no one can escape death. Your fate will be like the tree in front of you. At this moment, the goblin looked up and saw 2 soldiers standing in front of him. One of them pointed a ring at it, which was the explosion ring, a magic-grade accessory that causes a magic explosion with a cooldown of 10 minutes. The owner of the ring stood next to Ji-jan. His name is Kim Kanso, a level 3 commoner. The ring fired a shot and immediately detonated. The spell the goblin had just cast, Ji-jan sighed and said in a low voice, attacking during transformation or summoning is cheating. But we are soldiers, not anime characters. The 2 silently looked at the sunken ground. The goblin just now is also gone, the ghost died without a trace. The soldiers continued to rush into the forest to search for something. Someone came to report to Ji-jan, platoon leader, we have found the target. There are 18 missing residents. Most of them are seriously injured and need aid. At the same time, at the headquarters of the Korean Army, an old man stood in the conference room. After reviewing the new report, he crossed his arms and replied, okay, I will send reinforcements, and the construction team will also come. We plan to turn the Goblin village into our outpost. But I heard that Choi Jun was arrested. Do you know what he is planning? Unexpectedly, he suddenly asked. Ji-jan also honestly replied, no sir. The scary thing about him is not the data in the casino book, but the brain that can collect all the data and know exactly what to do with it. It's hard to guess the moves of such a person, but one thing I'm sure of is that he's not our enemy. The ostrich, also known as the Gao Emperor, is yawning tiredly at this moment. It sighs and lies on the parking lot, continuing to wait while people around are constantly pointing and exclaiming, oh my, it's so big, it's clearly Choi Jun's. Has anyone eaten yet? Well, then eat rice with XA by Palm. Our main character, Choi Jun, is also chewing on delicious beef rice. Kang Yu-sik slaps the table and interrogates me, guessing that someone who has reached the maximum level like you would know, right? Choi Jun honestly nodded in agreement. Soul Suit impatiently asked, are you chatting, really? He crossed his arms seriously and said, Choi Jun, you are currently a criminal, charged with fraud, theft, and even murder. Choi Jun excitedly gave a thumbs up and smiled, yes, it's all because of Jenny, no, because of me, I admit. Soul Suit smiled faintly, I've been in this field for 20 years. I just look at criminals and I can guess you're not a bad person. Everything that happened to you is just an accident. He walked over and patted Choi Jun on the shoulder, smiling. I think it's a perfect case of good person law, even though it's not applied in Korea. You surrender is good. I will take responsibility to resolve the misunderstanding between you and everyone. Hearing this, Choi Jun smiled faintly and put down the spoon. After finishing the bowl of rice, I didn't come to ask you guys for help. Sean-Soo thought so from the beginning. Hearing this, he was startled. At this time, a policeman rushed into their room and shouted, "Detective, there is an assault case. But the culprit has a piece of heroic equipment, so they have a hard time catching him." Similar cases also happen one after another, but we didn't have enough manpower. The police station was defeated. Police cars were constantly dispatched. Kanosit sat in the car and faintly smiled, expressing his opinion on the mission. There's no reward. I guess there's no cooperation between everyone. From the beginning, everything should have been like this. A rebellion must happen for a new order that suits the world and new forces. Sean-Soo coldly replied, "Your attitude is really bad. You should try to think like a normal person." He put on his gloves and continued, "I don't understand everything in the other world. But we are still human beings living in the human way, whether it is the other world or any world. Catching those who don't behave like humans is my job, no, a policeman's job." Sean-Soo coldly arrested the thief. "You are arrested for theft, assault, and intentional murder. If you resist, it will be a bit difficult. What do you intend to do?" Sean-Soo smiled and crushed the thief's sword. The thief witnessed a scene like that, was so scared that his whole body was goosebumps, and then whispered, "I surrender. I thought you were a monster." Just like that, Sean-Soo escorted the criminal onto the car where Kandashit was also waiting. He smiled faintly at Sean-Soo, implying, "The law in heaven on earth is meaningless now, just cooperate and become the kings of this city. It's simple with me." Sean-Soo smiled and replied, "That's why I keep you by my side. You are the most dangerous person in the city." Kanosit smiled faintly, thinking to himself, if it was before, I would agree with him, but Choi Jun, I can't read his thoughts, confessing in public in just one day. After the mission started, thinking about it, Kang Yu-sik's face twitched as if he had discovered something. He suddenly smiled meaningfully, "I think we will be busy from now on." Sean-Soo was confused, "What, why?" Kang Yu-sik smiled, "Because Choi Jun was arrested, this is a golden opportunity for the people to act." Sean-Soo only realized then, so the city will be chaotic. Do you think that's Choi Jun's purpose? Can I say Choi Jun is a good person and you won't listen? Kang Yu-sik didn't answer, thinking to himself that what Choi Jun wanted was for them to act. But what about after that? People will avoid Choi Jun again when the mission starts. Choi Jun is now languishing in jail. He smiles to himself, now it's just a patience game. The system shows Choi Jun's physical strength remaining at 92%, sacrificial offerings to the Supreme being 2352, the punishment of the Demon King is in progress. The Demon King wants more sacrificial offerings. The Demon King is not dissatisfied. Choi Jun goes into the item warehouse and takes out a prop, the tail feather of the Monkey King, a hero-grade tool, the tail feather of the stone monkey that has become a god, used to create a clone of the player. A new Choi Jun quickly appears in front of the real Choi Jun. The two are identical in appearance, speech, and personality, making it very difficult to distinguish. Choi Jun puts on his invisibility cloak and instructs the fake Choi Jun to please take my place well. The longer you can keep from being discovered, the better. The cloak Choi Jun is wearing is the Phase Transition Cloak, a hero-grade cloak, a miraculous scientific item that escapes the interference of the physical world, or in layman's terms, invisibility. The new Choi Jun is now groggily opening his eyes. A policeman behind him opens the door and walks in, shouting loudly, "What are you doing that's taking so long? Come out here quickly." The new Choi Jun turns his head coldly to look at the policeman. The policeman immediately raises his guard and asks, What else do you want to turn me into a sacrificial offering to the Supreme Being? No matter what your intention is, we have decided to control you, so you just try it. Hearing his provocative words, Choi Jun walks out of the cell with a cold face. He suddenly changes his expression and smiles, saying, "Let's go to the special isolation room. But I heard that people have prepared for me. I want to sleep." But the thorny emperor outside is suddenly silent and suddenly chirps. Not a second later, it spread its large wings and flew away. The policemen were suspicious. What's wrong with it all of a sudden? It should have taken a picture. As everyone predicted, Choi Jun, along with his invisibility cloak, is riding on the bird. He flips through the book, looks at it for a while, then smiles. All the citizens have started to act, so step 1 is successful, let's move on to the next step. At this time, Choi Jun flips to the treasure list of the jungle area and begins to study. For days since the start of the mission, the citizens are divided into 2 groups. Those outside the city leave the city to search for treasures. Those inside the city are responsible for handling things happening inside the city. You can freely choose your role. Even those citizens without combat abilities also find their own way to survive, like selling their swords and arrows, and so the mission seems to be going smoothly. That night at the military base in the jungle area, which used to be a goblin village, a man standing outside the balcony is lost in thought. That person is Ji John. He is thinking, we only used 2 days to complete a base of this scale. The human version in another world is really scary. If people with such abilities are willing to cooperate, we will easily complete the mission. But then he remembered the words of the sergeant who once said that the atmosphere in the city is not good right now. Ji John strongly agreed with these words, as more and more crimes were happening around the found treasures, including fraud, pickpocketing, and robbery. The police are trying their best, but it's difficult. Their manpower or equipment is not enough. Ji John once asked the sergeant if the army had started to act yet. The sergeant immediately shook his head and replied, "It's very dangerous. The army has never taken over the police's work until the police officially ask for help. We just do our job. Even if the request for help comes, our main direction is still to support the police. The army cannot control community order." Remembering these words, Ji John felt a bit powerless to realize that the sergeant was absolutely right. Even if the world changes, people are still the same. Ji John knew that nature is something that is very difficult to change forever. It's bitter. At the same time, in a dirty, stinky, and gloomy place in the city, a man with a face full of blue veins is suffering, his eyes wide open, coughing non-stop. The person behind him released streams of poison and laughed evilly. "If combined, it will create a poison like this, ha." He was able to create those streams of poison because in the palm of his hand he was holding a discarded magic pearl artifact. The mythical sphere, a magic pearl, was thrown away by an emoji who had practiced hard to become a dragon, right before turning into a dragon. The equipment takes progression as the basis. The more you use it, the more effective it will be. It can create and control many types of poison. At this point, the evil hand clapped again and the poison disappeared with it. The painful man lying on the ground just now finally had a chance to breathe fresh air. Returning to the other person, he smiled with satisfaction and said, "I didn't intend to kill you. I just saw that this person's information board was not published. Private information level, private information profession." He continued, "I have many poison combinations that I want to try, as you see." The frightened man backed away and pleaded loudly, "Please, I will give you all the treasures, please stop." The evil man sneered, "Adults always say that, experience is the greatest treasure." Just saw him reach out again to release the poison into the unfortunate man. The terrified man looked at the poison, now in the shape of a monster, advancing towards him. The poison gradually spread, along with the increasingly faint screams of the man. After who knows how long, Soul Suit reached out to take back the purple poisonous fist. He was extremely suspicious looking at the pile of poison. "What is this? Some biochemical and radioactive substances." Kang Yu-sik opened his mouth to compliment, "Convenient weapon, I'm sure the report happened near here." Not knowing what they saw ahead, the two suddenly stopped and looked at the man lying in front of them. Kang Yu-sik immediately approached and said interestingly, "That guy didn't even touch the treasure. This victim is not dead yet." Sean-suit sighed and said tiredly, "I don't know if it's the behavior of some individual bastard or a group. But it seems that something very dangerous has appeared." After saying that, the two fell silent, looking at the pile of dark people stacked on the other side. Kang Yu-sik was very interested, smiled and made a guess. After the great Devil King Choi Jun disappeared, another Devil King appeared from the darkness. "Again? Is that so, isn't it?" Sean-suit repeated again. "I said Choi Jun is not a bad person." Kang Yu-sik shrugged and smiled faintly. "I know. I only saw Sean-suit speaking deeply, but I also admit that this started with Choi Jun." Kang Yu-sik was slightly startled to hear him agree with me. "Right, it's surprisingly serious," Sean-suit determinedly said. "So I have to have a clear conversation with him." Kang Yu-sik asked again, "Do you think Choi Jun will share what he's thinking?" Sean-suit shook his head. "Not only at times like this, I need to question those around him. Over here, Choi Jun is wandering on the clouds when he suddenly sneezes." He gently rubbed his nose. "Is it a cold? But my level is the highest. The system shows the satisfaction level of the god Kim Hong is 6.74%. Looking at the notification, Choi Jun muttered, "It's not very high even though I've added a few treasures for appraisal. Well, it's no use." At this time, Choi Jun, along with the Emperor Bird, carrying a 10-gang treasure bag, is flying over the desert area he is heading to. The place of a whirlwind for an unknown reason, the Emperor Bird chirps continuously as it gets closer. Choi Jun quickly escaped from his thoughts, looked down and said, "I've arrived, ha." Choi Jun, along with the 10-gang treasure bag, went down and waved goodbye to the Emperor Bird. "You did well, I will be back soon, so rest." Because no matter how hard the people try to collect treasures, Choi Jun and the 10-gang bag let themselves fall onto a mountain of gold, a real treasure mountain everywhere. The Jordans that touched were made of real gold. Choi Jun fell onto the gold mountain and shouted loudly, satisfied that I had taken the most valuable items. Choi Jun passed a few gold mountains to a place to consider. He suddenly smiled gently and said, "Eat quickly and grow up, my god Kim Hong." The fat pig that is constantly sucking gold into its body, this is the god Kim Hong, or the uncomfortable expression. The information appears, the young god Kim Hong, a young god who needs love, care, and especially gold. The soldiers saw Ji-jan about to leave. They all cried and said as if they were saying their last words, "Platoon leader, just leave it to us." Ji-jan looked at them acting like actors and coldly said, "I'm just going to deliver a message to him. Choi Jun, don't overdo it." So the soldiers who were crying and mourning just now stood behind his car, waving goodbye and begging, "Remember to bring ice cream back, and other snacks too." After seeing Ji-jan's car disappear, the three of them asked each other seriously, "Has he left yet?" "He's gone, then it's time to party and rest, let's get it." They turned their faces in an instant, just like a bunch of kids who didn't know that only Ji-jan had left. They were still under the supervision of many superiors. Looking at the young group dancing and jumping like going to kindergarten, Sergeant Park couldn't bear to scold them. He just sighed and thought, one day should be fine. It's almost time to raid the large dungeon, let them relax a bit. I'm worried about commanding more than him, just one person. While he was still thinking and worrying, that gang of bandits had already rushed to him, like a bunch of monkeys clinging to him. "Call it, hey, Deputy Platoon Leader, quickly turn on the music of the K-pop girl groups for a year. Bring out the alcohol that we hid, let's play some fun military games too, look at this gang of bandits." After seeing Ji-jan's car disappear, the three of them asked each other seriously, "Has he left yet?" "He's gone, then it's time to party and rest, let's get it." They turned their faces in an instant, just like a bunch of kids who didn't know that only Ji-John had left. They were still under the supervision of many superiors. Looking at the young group dancing and jumping like going to kindergarten, Sergeant Park couldn't bear to scold them. He just sighed and thought, one day should be fine, it's almost time to raid the large dungeon, let them relax a bit. I'm worried about commanding more than him, just one person. While he was still thinking and worrying, that gang of bandits had already rushed to him, like a bunch of monkeys clinging to him. Call it, hey, Deputy Platoon Leader, quickly turn on the music of the K-pop girl groups for a year. Bring out the alcohol that we hid, let's play some fun military games too, look at this gang of bandits. Sergeant Park could only silently chant Buddhist mantras in his heart to restrain himself from letting these fools follow him. On the other side, Goblin Jack was in stark contrast to the cheerful scene. He seemed to be very serious, concentrating his strength into his hands, then transferring that force into key points all over Choi Jun's body. After the transfer, Choi Jun immediately couldn't bear the pain and fell to the ground. Goblin Jack didn't care much about these trivial matters. He just quietly withdrew his hands and said indifferently, I've hit your acupoints, so the pain should have lessened. As soon as he heard this, Choi Jun, who was pretending to be dead, immediately revived and thanked Goblin Jack with a smile. However, contrary to Choi Jun's joy, Goblin Jack was a bit contemplative, saying, but this can only alleviate the pain, not stop it completely. That's enough, Choi Jun reassured him. Then he thought to himself that Jack seemed to have accepted the fact that he had become one of the 4 heavenly kings, as if he was used to such things. There were many things he wanted to know, but he decided to wait until the situation stabilized before asking. Meanwhile, Sergeant Kuhn was in the city, planning to rob some vacant houses in the forest area. Ji-John, on the other hand, seemed to have sharper instincts because he wasn't driving. Seeing his unusual behavior, Private King Min next to him worriedly asked, What's wrong, Commander? The platoon leader looked at his face, and the question that the private wanted to ask was, Do you need to go to the bathroom? Unexpectedly, while the car was running smoothly, Ji-John suddenly ordered to turn the car around. Why? The private asked in confusion. There's an ambush. Ji-John didn't bother to explain much, but just casually spit out those 3 aggressive words. Sure enough, as soon as he finished speaking, the car was suddenly shot at, causing the car to swerve. The private driver couldn't help but scream. However, the ambushers continued to drink mana potions, a magical tool that restores a small amount of mana, and shouted decisively, Continue the attack. The weapon they used to attack was a low-level magic wand, a magic grade wand that allows you to use a level 1 to 3 magic circle once. Seeing that they didn't stop, Ji-John was even more puzzled. Are they crazy to attack the army? But if they fired back at the civilians, it would cause chaos. He thought for a while and then opened his control panel to find another way. Then he turned to the private driver and asked, Can you escape from them until we meet the support force? Yes, the brave private replied. Then he immediately steered the car into another road, trying to use the turning time to extend the distance from them. After escaping from them for a while, Ji-John was able to calm down and think. The crime rate in the city is worse than I thought. The strong people work outside, leaving only the police and unarmed citizens in the city. It's an ideal environment for criminals. If a powerful villain appears now, the city will immediately become the most dangerous place. Sure enough, as soon as Ji-John finished thinking, the private driver next to him anxiously called out, Platoon leader, there's something that looks dangerous approaching us. It's too fast, both of them almost exclaimed in unison. On the other side, it's not the image of a monster in the city, but another one that looks just as vicious. It's the Abyss Lizard, a level 3 difficulty, a lizard that has been controlled by the Abyss. Its stats increased significantly when in the Abyss. At this moment, the one fighting it is Choi Jun. The two have been evenly matched for a while now, making it hard to determine a winner. Until Choi Jun swung his sword, slashing the monster across its body. When it was defeated, as usual, a large explosion occurred, accompanied by a blinding light. After the fight, Choi Jun felt a bit exhilarated and muttered to himself, "That acupoint technique is amazing, I feel much lighter." "Don't overexert yourself," Goblin Jack suddenly reminded him from the side. Then he suddenly felt a strange sensation and said to Goblin Jack, "The atmosphere here is very similar to the abyss. All kinds of demons will be stronger in the abyss." So Choi Jun opened the system to check the information about this place. It's the underground city of the Lizard Splitter, difficulty level 2. The underground city leads to the abyss. The skills of demons and monsters will be enhanced. Looking at these parameters, Choi Jun pondered, the Demon King is also a demon, so the power of the Demon King will be much stronger. Thinking this, he said to Goblin Jack, "So I want to get the treasure and leave here quickly." "We have enough," Goblin Jack replied discontentedly. But Choi Jun just smiled and took out a mask. Then he said, "The important thing here is not to satisfy the God Emperor Kim. This is just the easiest way to complete the mission, which means that the rewards obtained will be the least." After saying that, he looked into the depths of the abyss and thought to himself, "What I want is to get as many rewards as possible." Lieutenant Cohen and Miss Haichu and the chaos in the city right now, all are in his plan to get those rewards. Because they were in Choi Jun's plan, Ji-Jan and everyone in the city were also facing danger at this moment. While the private next to him was trying to drive in the eerie atmosphere, Ji-Jan took out a bag, not knowing what was inside. He remembered the day when he was given this. He was also curious to ask, "What is this?" And he got the answer from Kim Min Song, "It's your promotion gift. It's a reward from a mission, but I think you'll find it more useful than me. I've also given your subordinates some good equipment." Seeing Ji-Jan silent, Kim Min Song asked, "Do you want more?" "No, it's just that I'm not used to the fully funded military," he replied at the time, now opening it to see that this thing is called a temporary hideout. A hero-grade tool with the function of creating a safe area within a 3-meter radius, for 3 minutes, and the time can be extended depending on the surrounding environment. Then when he glanced and saw the private had driven the car into the danger zone, Ji-Jan anxiously called to stop. If he acted rashly now, it would cause an accident. But the soldier tried to reply, wanting to say something. But a second later, both of them were startled and couldn't say a word. When they saw a pair of legs landing on the roof of the car. The demon looked very human, just covering his face with a strange stream of air. He happily sat on Ji-Jan's car and sarcastically greeted, "Hello, military gentleman." Ji-Jan looked at him, his face unchanged. Then he opened his mouth disdainfully, "I want to talk to your leader. If you're a minion, don't interfere." The demon was angry but had to force a smile and complimented him, "Sharp tongue, I like you." He looked at Ji-Jan and said. A second later, the demon suddenly lost his composure, slammed his hand on the car window, and yelled, "But do you know I'm the leader? And I don't want to hear you talk, just listen to me and do as I say, okay?" He whispered, "If you don't want to die." The demon sneered at Ji-Jan. Then it began to spread a purple smoke from its body everywhere. The smoke was like poison, making the whole city shrouded in darkness. Wherever the smoke passed, everything softened and then gradually melted. Looking at this scene, the soldier next to him was terrified, immediately rushed to hug Ji-Jan's neck and screamed, "I'm melting, save me." Ji-Jan, also startled at this scene, couldn't help but think, is it corrosive smoke or poison? I don't know what it is. But its coverage is too wide and deadly. If there is any mistake, it will become a mass-killing weapon. Thinking about it, he snapped and took out the gift he was given, muttering, "Now we should worry about our survival first." The demon still didn't know what Ji-Jan was doing. It sat still on the roof of the car and chatted with him. Until he heard Ji-Jan say, "I can surrender, if you follow one of my conditions, you voluntarily become my subordinate." Ji-Jan crossed his arms and said, "I see that your mind is not normal now, I will make you more human." The demon heard Ji-John mention it and laughed. His voice gradually became threatening. "This soldier, you just crossed the line." Even the soldier next to him saw Ji-John speak aggressively and couldn't help but criticize him. "Why do you always do that?" Then Ji-John was also embarrassed and didn't know what to like. Then he looked outside at the demon and then said confidently, "To create opportunities for the support troops, what else?"